All right, if I can get everyone's attention, please. My name's JP. We're planning board members. We've got Andy, Marion, Rick, Cliff. We've got 2 workshops lined up for tonight. We had to reschedule one from the 5th because of it was an ad notice, right? We couldn't meet the deadline for that. So the first one that we're going to do will be which application is this? The one that was scheduled for the 5th. Was that this
Miller
one?
Avenue?
Yeah.
Okay. And can you walk us through, because I wasn't at this meeting, what the workshop is before?
It's basically to go through more of the application. We hadn't sent out notifications to butters at the time.
Okay.
So we wanted to use this time to go through this in a public setting. And then that way, at our next planned meeting, we're able to basically come up with a vote or, guidance at that point.
Okay. So can I see the application? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm playing catch up. At the last meeting, my nephew, who's like 5 months old, there's a chance he might have meningitis or your brain started forming. So I had to drive down to DC. I missed the meeting. He's fine, but he was in the hospital for 3 days, so I couldn't make it. So, let's see, John and Deborah. So
Subject?
subject.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is
I'm
Steve
Steve.
Argolda.
Steve, it's nice to meet you. So, if I remember right, something about shoreline zoning, you guys were waiting for the town to update it to the state minimums, which would allow you guys to do it in addition to your home, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and the notice to the abutters has been sent out? Okay, do we have any abutters here? Okay, just curious. Okay, and let's see. Did you guys get the new land ordinance things? Everyone's got a copy? Yes.
New being from
What's the date on that? September?
September 18th.
Being,
Yeah.
but it still has
The table of contents.
Table of
is
contents,
on, but
yeah.
The document, the information.
So we're gonna have to get the table of contents updated. Let me grab this. This one again. All right. Is Jesse in here? There you go. All right, so question for you on this application. They are, it's under the non-conforming for shoreland, is that what it is?
Yep.
Okay. And let me get to where it's at. Only requirements. Section 8. Appreciate you guys' patience. I just want to be able to do this by the book. 47. Berlin. Okay. Okay, so they're within 250 feet of the shore. All right. Is your existing home right now is non-conforming? So this is just an expansion to it.
Looks like there's no expansion towards the pond. It's the opposite
No.
direction. So.
The other lot that you own is across Miller Ave, is that correct?
Yes. And we put we bought that land, which is 2.9 acres, and we put in a pump up, we have a leach field on that property, and we have a pump up station on our existing lot, which is connected to the holding tank, and then we pump up the hill to the leach field.
What are you using for a foundation?
On the new building?
Yeah. And what was
It's
underneath the
concrete, poured
existing
concrete. The proposed is a poured concrete foundation.
as a slab?
It'll actually be frost walls.
Right, frost walls and then a slab on the top.
Yeah. But the construction isn't slab on grade construction, so it'll be a crawl space
Is
underneath.
there gonna be any heat in the building,
Yes.
Yeah.
as in a furnace,
Heat pump.
heat pump? So this is a conversion from seasonal to year-round? It's,
Well, it's more like free season and more,
yeah, but that
Or-
increases.
well, or actually trying to come in like, instead of waiting until, May or June, trying to come in like in April and maybe stay through October or even into November on the weekend.
I guess I'll ask you, and I'll also get this to Jesse, has there been any building or additions of any kind since 1989?
No,
Negative.
no,
And that's all documented.
yeah. My dad, it was my mom and dad first, and then we purchased it from my parents at about 99.
Well-
About 99, I think.
There is a thing called contingent lots that deals with the fact that you own two lots that are contingent of each other.
Uh-huh.
And 8C3A is going to be, it's on me, it's on page 50.
Is that page 50?
Well, that's where I'll find it.
Okay. There's non-conforming lots, contingent built lots.
Right. And is the lot also, is the lot that the structure on the water now is a non-conforming lot, yes? Jesse?
Non-conforming.
Non-conforming lot with a non-conforming structure, right?
Yes.
Okay. See, read 3A.
Yeah, non-conforming lots. A non-conforming lot of record is if the effective date of this ordinance or amendment thereto may be built upon without the need for a variance from the zoning board of appeals, provided that such lot is in separate ownership and not contingent with any other lot in the same ownership. And that all provisions of this ordinance except those lot size, lot width, and shore frontage requirements which have made the non-conforming lot can be met, which they can't be because isn't it the,
Right, it's a non-conforming lot,
Right.
so.
any other requirement shall not be varied unless a variance is obtained by action of the Board of Appeals. Water setback required under shoreland district requirements shall not be reduced by variance. And then it goes to contingent built lots. If two or more contingent lots or parcels are in a single joint ownership of record at the time of adoption of this ordinance, which was
Yeah, it doesn't
September 2018.
go to that, go to D.
Okay. Contingent lots vacant or partially built. If two or more contingent lots or parcels are single or joint ownership of record at the time of or since adoption or amendment of this ordinance, if any of these lots do not individually meet the dimensional requirements of this ordinance or subject or subsequent amendments, and if one or more of the lots are vacant or contain no principal structure, the lots shall be combined to the extent necessary to meet the dimensional requirements.
That's just talking about
Yeah,
joint ownership of lots.
right. So,
So in other words,
There's not two houses that they own, right, on that one lot.
No. No, but it doesn't say that.
So, just so I guess I'm trying to break this down into the simplest form possible for me. You know, kindergarten styles is where I'm at. So, you guys have a house.
Yeah.
It's not conforming because it's too close to the shoreline, right?
Correct.
According to state laws. You guys want to build onto the house, you don't want to build towards the shore, you want to build opposite of that.
Yeah,
But because it's in a non-conforming lot and your original house was too close, you need to come to the planning board for approval to do this.
yeah.
What concerns do you have?
You know, they are allowed to go up to 30% with the 25 to 75 foot rule from the water.
Right.
They-
Are you guys going over 30%?
We are not.
No,
We're not
Okay.
even
From what I
actually-
understand, from what I understand here, you're adding 152 square feet to the
Yeah,
building.
we're-
A 30% would be 262.8.
Yeah, we're-
Okay, so we're looking at 15%, you said 17%?
Yeah, are you, Nate, looking at how they added the deck and
Yeah, so if you
all
look
that
at,
to it? That isn't part of the square footage, right?
have decks,
Yeah.
patio cover,
All of
everything is
that.
in
Now-
Oh, it does, yeah.
Okay.
square footage, yeah.
So
So
that
this
used
is-
boards?
Yes.
So
So it's
you
like if you
used
took an overhead view, like a snapshot, anything that's like built is the square footage.
Yep.
So that's why here it says total area of dwelling, overhang, decks and stairs at house. 867 plus 152 square feet is what they're proposing to add on to, which brings them to a total of 1,028 square feet.
Okay.
We use a professional land surveyor to gather the information of the pre-existing. And we did our own calculations on the proposed, which is much easier. And we counted roof overhangs, so it's bird's eye view, so it's roof overhangs, just as it is, apples to apples.
And we're talking about one story or two for the addition?
Yeah, the current is one story, the roof, the new state ruling, which Parsons Field has adopted just recently, has a height limitation, so
Yeah.
we're allowed 30% expansion, but we are limited in height, which is 20 feet from the grade to the ridgepole. So we're 19.9, 3/4 of an inch.
You didn't want to do 7/8?
No,
Okay.
no, we figured that would be too easy.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could use another couple feet, but I
Right.
guess that probably won't work.
Yeah. The current structure does sit outside of the side setbacks, so it is very much non-conforming in that way, and we're bringing it back in to the building envelope.
So let's talk about butters. What will these guys read? You guys neighbors,
Yep,
have you guys talked with them? Land uses on
Yeah,
page.
but then go to the next, it tells you all of the reasons why.
Right.
In the lower half of the last paragraph.
Right. It goes through and determining no greater adverse impact will occur. Planning board shall require written documentation from the applicant regarding the probable effects on public health, safety, erosion, sedimentation, water quality, fish, wildlife habitat, vegetative cover, visual and actual points of public access to waters, natural beauty, floodplain management, archaeological and historic resources, and the commercial fishing and maritime activities and other functional water
You don't
equipment uses.
have to read the
So,
whole thing.
but if we go to the land use, back to page 17 of land uses. We're talking about a residential home, which is number one, and home occupation. It's staying the same. It's not going from a home occupation to anything else,
I'm not gonna argue.
you know?
Well, it was worth discussing. I mean,
No, I'm not saying this, Denari, I'd love to do this because I
I
think
think
it
it's
gives
an
us.
important factor
It is.
in waterfront.
So if that's the case though, then we
It
have,
absolutely
Because
is.
But they,
we
I'm not-
have
Well, then-
they haven't come
many
here and determined that they're,
seasonal people on
they haven't said that we're
Long Pond
living
and
there
Long
all year round either.
Right.
but even if they
That's not-
were, we would have to make a
You know?
determination if it's gonna affect the pond much.
Yeah.
My determination is it really wouldn't. I mean, them visiting in the winter, I don't think it's gonna have any detrimental effect on the pond. So it could be a moot point anyway.
It's just that we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
make a
worth
decision.
discussing,
I-
it's worth discussing.
I just want to say this, like, as a board, this is the most valuable thing that we can do, and regardless if any any question of if it's applicable or not is asked, us looking through the regulation, defining exactly what the regulation says in our interpretation is exactly what we as a board need to do to grow, become more well-versed. I apologize if it prolongs it a little bit of time here, but it allows us to go through an application completely, so when we do vote on it, you know, there's no question that everybody has the same interpretation of things.
Can I just want to make one quick comment?
Yeah.
That it just dawned on me that I'm not sure how many people in this room are aware of West Pond and the condition of West Pond and the invasive weed. And as members of our own association, of the West Pond Association, we're heavily involved, along with the state of Maine, and personally paid dive team to try to control the invasive weed, and we all volunteer.
Keep our lake perfect.
And to preserve everything about that. And if you haven't been to West Pond, it's a jewel. It's a small place, not that deep. The water, we test it on a regular basis, very clean,
I
but
understand, but things can change. And
Right.
it should, look at Long Pond right now,
Right.
what it's going through.
Yeah, so
I mean,
our situation is we're on top of the pond, we take care of it, we don't wanna harm anything. And we're never selling. How many years have you been there?
I'm 62 and I've been there since I was 10, so 52 years.
Just a little bit.
Just a
Yeah.
little bit. And it's where my children are, it's being passed down to my children and my grandchildren. They all love it.
What, the
I have no intention to leave.
primary reason why this is being replaced is because of the foundation that's underneath it. The foundation,
you're replacing the whole building?
we've included a set of plans for the building that we're proposing to build. The foundation underneath the current residence is, it's leaning towards the water.
Okay.
So,
It's gonna be a house boat.
so that's the primary reason. They had options, the subjects had options. One of the options that they had is renovating what they have. Problem is it's really limited to the foundation it's on, and it is leaning. So, they've decided to, replace it. And, we're here to do just that, to make it better. To make it so it's not gonna be an issue later on. And that's why we're here. And in doing so, we're following the rules that the state has, allowed communities to work with, the ruling that they've allowed. Yeah.
So, just to make sure I understand, so are you scrapping the entire building?
That changes.
Are you gonna
things.
jack up what's there, straighten it out, and then put a foundation?
That totally,
We're taking the building that's there out and we're replacing it with a new building.
So this
because this
isn't
isn't an expansion.
Yeah, so it's not an
This
expansion then?
this is a total different ballpark now.
Okay.
It's a replacement.
It's a replacement structure.
Cool.
Last meeting, we didn't get the opportunity to present any of this. We really couldn't talk, so, we're here to talk about that tonight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you wanna run through, the plans? Did you wanna give an overview?
Sure, yeah. So again, step one, we paid a surveyor to take,
Okay.
we worked closely with David toward the end of last year. And, before he stepped down as code enforcement officer. And we worked with him on all the things that we can and can't do. Which we're pretty fluent with. We do a number of projects on the water. throughout the state of Maine, and we go to planning boards like this often. So, his understanding and our understanding were just about the same. The only thing that he had a concern about is that the existing structure, that one that's there now, is outside of the side setback. And he didn't think that we could continue with that. In other words, just because it's sitting there doesn't mean we have the right to build right where it's sitting. In other words, we have to make it more conforming or conforming on the side setbacks, but we were allowed to keep it the same dimension from the water or high water.
Okay.
So we paid a surveyor to measure up by third party. This is something we do all the time. We don't measure it up. The existing. So we paid a surveyor to guide us, and David guided us through this whole process. And the surveyor came back with the information on the size of the existing. Now, the state of Maine has 2 inland water rulings. One's an old and one's newer, within the last 10 years. The old ruling basically allows you to replace a camp that's non-conforming on the water. You cannot go any closer to the water. You do have to follow side setbacks. Let's see, and the old ruling basically gave you a volume or square footage calculation of no more than 130%, whichever was largest. They came up with a new ruling just in the last 10 years, and Parsons Field has adopted that ruling, and basically the change in the ruling is instead of the volume calculation, which people are getting cheated out of square footage because volume would max out before square footage did. So volume would max out at 130 on the old ruling, and then square footage could be at 120, and so people are getting cheated by that. So the state of Maine allows people to, in this town too, allows them to remove the existing camp, to replace it, and go 30% more in square footage as the footprint, as a crow, a view from the crow's perspective, bird's eye perspective. So, but you cannot be over 100, you cannot be over 20 feet in height. That's the rule. And that would prevent people from building basically skyscrapers.
Right.
Because bird's eye view, you can't tell if it's 6 floors or 1 floor on that calculation. So that's the checks and balances on that. So we've done everything that we know to do based on the state's rule and the Parsons Field's rules, according to David last year. So
just to ask a quick question.
Sure.
So I guess my confusion,
Sure.
and I guess the board's confusion comes from when I first started this, I asked if we were talking about expanding 25 feet away from the water. When you guys came here the first time, it was for an expansion, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
now,
changed.
yeah,
Yeah.
now I'm tracking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in a sense, it is an expansion because we're taking square footage that exists and we're moving it to the allowable 30%.
Mhm.
But it is being done, we're removing the existing and replacing it with a new foundation and a new building.
Okay. So it's more of a replacement with expansion.
It is, that's
Okay,
right.
got it.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Did you want to keep on through the plans at all? You guys didn't get a chance to talk. Normally,
Sure.
we had the applicant go through page by page. Just
Sure,
explain
sure.
what they submitted.
Yeah. So basically, the first page, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Page 48,
Yeah.
we're in shoreland, and it's about foundations. A new enlarged or replacement foundation is constructed under a non-conforming structure. The structure new foundation must be placed such that the setback requirement is met to the greatest practical extent, basing its decision on the criteria located below.
I think that's what we just pretty much went through there.
So
Well, in regards to that, this lot has got no room. I mean, you walk right out of the existing camp right now, you walk out the back door and
Is
you're
meant to the braided-
feet away
greatest
from Miller
right
Avenue,
of the
literally, like that.
Extent. Sorry.
So as far as the greatest possible extent is concerned, it's against the back property line right now. It's there.
It is not, the pump is on the back of your property
Hey
line.
Lindsay,
Read,
do you have another copy?
You're talking about
the
a
application anymore?
So,
the foundation must be placed such that the setback from the shoreline,
say that, it says setback.
setback requirement is met to the greatest practical extent as determined.
Right,
But I
and
think
but
that's
setback is on each side of the property. You're talking about,
I'm
The property
talking
lines.
waterfront setback.
but it doesn't say waterfront setback here.
It doesn't say side setbacks either.
No, it just says setback.
It says setback
Right.
requirement.
So if he were to move further back from the water, then he's pretty squeezed off of his lot. So I don't know how much we can
Yeah,
Be in the
but
road.
we're actually have
that's the
to,
point.
what we have to do, we have a setback from the road, and what we have to do is violate the back line setback that is in place
Yeah,
to be able to move the house further back. And we can do that. Problem is we only have 25 feet from the property line to where the structure begins. Less than the length of this one. Now, according to David, if that's the case, one could argue that we could also violate the side setback, which is in place right now, which help us build a little bit extra square footage because we tapped out at 297 instead of 1297 instead of 1335. So if we're gonna do that, if we can build into that zone or that setback zone, we can probably also build to the side a little. Well, in the greatest possible extent in your case is the setback. I mean, that's what we recognize, and that's also what David recognized also.
New CEO, how do you feel about it?
I feel they've met their greatest extent possible that they can move back without, off the water, without that, they're moving it into the envelope now,
Okay.
okay? Into that square, they're meeting their setbacks all the way around except for the water, which the building already exists there. So, I'm fine.
Okay.
So on presentation, this first page here, this page right here is basically a plot plan for the existing camp.
Okay.
And if you look closely, what we've done is this dotted line all the way around this trapezoid is the setback. That's the setback rolling. Now you can see that the existing camp is outside of that setback now. And again, in conversations with David, he had concerns about having us building with the same, in that same footprint that this is shown in right now. He wanted us to bring the new structure more conforming to the side setbacks, which we did. So we put the entire new structure within the trapezoid or building area. And that is shown, now this second page is just a picture of the existing.
Before we go.
Sure.
So on this picture here,
Yeah.
the septic tank, is it actually in Miller Avenue? Is this all part of?
Their parking. Yeah, this is the parking area right here.
Okay.
So a vehicle can go and park here, it's right at the edge of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then their leach field goes on,
Yeah.
goes where?
So up here.
Okay.
So this is like the pre-existing condition, this
Right.
plot here, yeah. We're showing the old structure.
Okay. Oh, and so this is pre-existing, right? The shed and, okay. Alright.
And this right here is the proposed, this is the same building envelope right here. And then this is the proposed footprint within, now bringing it in from, from the side to make it conforming on the sides. And that's what David wanted us to do. He wanted us to move it into the, the building envelope.
So, Jesse, how does, can you come here? How does a road work for this? Because normally a setback is taken from the middle of the road, right? So they've got this bend here. So how is this setback defined as the very corner of this road?
chairs right there.
Where the setbacks from the property line.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
So this is their parking area.
all right.
They really can't move this house back any further off the water. You'll end up right in this road.
No, that's not where I
You're
think
only
it should go.
25 feet from it.
All right.
I'll tell you where I think it should go.
Where do you think it should go?
I think it should go in the back lot.
I thought that's, it should
Go
go
in the
lot.
back lot.
That's a separate lot.
It's the second lot,
Were those two lots purchased at different times?
absolutely.
So those two lots, one was.
But you have your septic on that lot. So you will never convince me to approve anything that has that septic on the other lot. I won't. Because that's setting us up. It is, so,
That is a problem.
just
Unless
saying
lots are
that
combined.
that's where my head's at.
And what's the ramification on the cost to combine the lot?
On the cost? It's, I
Yeah,
don't.
she has a-
I have a question, so
Yeah.
if we pay to, or however we combine the lots, then does that force us that we would have to put our camp up in the woods?
Nope.
And not even,
Mm-mm.
How do we know that?
how,
Well,
I
so,
understand.
okay.
Where does it say that you're gonna not do
I
that?
don't understand that.
That's
You
gonna be
expect
conditional.
me to trust you,
No, I,
so,
no,
you know,
I just, I
it
don't
works both
understand.
ways.
Listen, okay, so
They have,
So just because you would, number one, I don't believe there's a cost to combine lots. I think it's something that's done through the tax office, so you don't have to pay extra to do it.
Okay.
I don't believe so. Don't quote me on that. Number two, we're talking about an existing structure that's being replaced, right, in shoreland thing. There's nothing within our ordinance that says a replacement has to be put on a lot that's combined to it. Now, I can't give you what you're looking for, like black and white text saying if you guys were combined lots, that we're gonna do something sneaky to make you build somewhere else.
I'm just gonna, I could say, that if you now have it combined, now you're talking about one lot, and
Yeah.
then that changes their building envelope.
it changes the building envelope.
It changes where
He
they
Yeah,
have
but,
to put
so,
stuff.
but what I'm saying though is,
Yeah.
Then you would basically, I see what they're saying, it's like,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, now you can set the house
Right.
back further because there's a separate.
but what I'm
There's
saying
more
is,
than that.
if we put that as a condition of approval for their application,
Yes. unless
that
it's-
means their application is approved to build in the building envelope that's proposed on the condition that you guys combine your lots.
But I think, I must say this, that if that's the case and you allow this, then you're gonna be in violation with the state.
They've already allowed, I mean, it's.
And the reason why is
licensed to
because
have
when they're
leach field
combined,
there.
your greatest practical extent
Mhm.
as a condition has not been met. And that puts you guys into a big situation. The subjects have the right to sell the back lot in easement, put an easement for their septic system.
Mhm.
If you make them combine those two lots
Right.
as a condition to
Well-
do this, then you're putting
Then-
yourselves at
So
exposure.
that's an alternate suggestion though, is putting an easement on the second lot.
Yeah, maybe that could be a
the
condition.
deed.
If you were to sell the second lot, you would have to put an
Right.
easement
There we
on it
go.
as you
Now
sell.
we're talking about solutions versus
Right.
putting the town of Parsonsfield
Right,
Yeah,
in
it just-
jeopardy
if you
of a
sold one,
potential,
you would have-
I mean,
You would just have to let
Yeah.
the buyer
And-
know that, hey, my leach
That's-
field's on here.
if you play this
Take it or
out,
leave it.
Yeah, if you
No,
play
it's
this
gotta
out in
be in
both
writing.
situations.
Well, yeah, so add
What?
it to the deed.
Yeah, it would have to be an amendment to the deed.
We can put a deeded right away for the septic system on the back lot so that if they decide to sell it or do something later on, then they have the right to do that, and whoever purchased it has the right to know. Of course, they'll know it. They'll pull the pull the
Right.
deed, and they'll know there's a septic
I'm
system
not
and deeded right away.
concerned with leach field there on a separate property.
Unless there's
They own both
an
properties,
easement
you know.
on the second
Is
property
there any,
that
anywhere on the
allows
deed
for
or
that
there's
septic.
documentation that leach
I
field
hate
does
that
cross
idea
over the
too,
road into
really.
the other
Wh-
property?
When we bought the land, we didn't have a leach field on that.
Okay,
So there isn't anything like
No.
that now.
okay.
No, we
So I think,
bought.
I think in your own best interest, it might be good to have something like that in writing,
Sure.
just for future.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. The purpose of us buying that land was to protect us, and then,
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, we were
didn't want
pumping
people
the
buying a
tank.
building place right next to it.
yeah, you know, and it made more sense to.
And please understand, we're not sending any ultimatums tonight, we're talking.
No, right.
Oh, yeah, we understand that.
Okay.
Right.
But we can't even make a vote on this tonight, this is a
Right.
workshop.
Sure.
Okay.
What's in place there now? Is it a holding tank? It's there now?
Yeah,
Where?
right now on lot,
Yeah,
the building lot, we have a holding tank,
okay.
which feeds into, directly next to it, the pumping tank,
Been there for years.
that we added, and then when we bought the land, then we put the leach field.
What about using just a holding tank with no leach field? And
Can-
having a.
Can we do that?
Yeah,
You know, yeah, we could do that, but if I did that,
it would have to be under certain, it would have an alarm set up on it.
yeah, we have an
I was
alarm
gonna say
now.
that.
It was set up so when it's 3/4 full, it has to be pumped.
Yeah,
And there has to be a service contract done
yeah, and,
from,
but we don't, that was the whole purpose of putting the leach field in.
it's
But
just
if
another
I-
option, I'm just
Right,
saying.
if we disconnected it, then it would just go to the holding tank.
So I think that there are two very viable options for you guys in this. You can look at a deed or an easement on the deed. You can also look at having that bigger tank. Really, it's you guys that I'd like for you to consider those two things. And then at the next meeting, please talk with us and let us know what works best for you guys. I understand your concerns about the property and Westlake and having these things divided. And I do see an easement as a very viable solution, or having it a self-contained thing. And I think that if,
It's gotta be viable that lot has to be viable by itself, period.
and so if,
Unless you have an easement or something that includes that leach field,
right,
that it's still able to be used by the front lot even when someone else buys the back lot.
yeah.
That's what, just
So-
like you have a right of way passage
Unless
on the
they
road to
do-
your rear lot.
So just to be very clear, the board will vote at our next meeting, okay? And based off of what you guys are comfortable with, we will vote on the application with a condition. The condition will either be an easement on your deeded property, other property, or the other septic tank recommendation, or if there's something else out there that you guys think of that's amazing, we'll absolutely consider it and discuss it and talk about it. I don't think that the board itself, and you can't hold us to this because we haven't taken a vote yet, has a problem with the replacement of the building, because as you said, the foundation is going towards the lake, and I'd rather have it fixed now than slide into the lake. That's just me. The expansion, as long as you guys are keeping it within that envelope, setbacks, they look reasonable enough to me. I'm one board member among the others, okay? So that's the vote that it's gonna come down to. What other questions do we have as a board for the applicants about their application? What questions do you guys have for us?
You wanna go for it?
Yeah, close to, right now, the existing cottage is within 25 feet of the lake? And you're thinking about a frost wall?
Not going towards the water.
No, not necessarily, but to do a frost wall, you gotta go down 4 feet. Have you had any test digging done to see if water from the lake didn't start to fill up the frost wall? Has any of that been tested? 4 feet down, 25 feet from,
Yeah.
that's close.
Obviously need to bring in, to get frost protection so it doesn't heave. We haven't done any testing, no. In our experience, it's not uncommon for footings to flood overnight. In other words, if we dig it today, tomorrow morning, floods out. We have ways of pumping that into a dry well, and there's a process with that. Same with well drilling, so that we can get footings in.
Right.
Well drilling on the water, with the slurry, we have to pump off the slurry into a confined area. We have to do the same. There's a whole set of regulations above and beyond the silt fencing that we have to follow with DEP, yeah.
And so for like the foundation and the building, that the code enforcement officer, right, you inspect that as they go along with the building?
Yes.
Is that correct? To make sure
Correct.
that they're in compliance with both the town and the state?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's actually a certification program from the DEP for our earth contractors. So in order for them to work on, it's not uncommon for a town where we're working on the water to ask for the DEP certification from the excavation contractor that we're using to, to prove that they've been through and passed that certification program, so, yeah.
That was my next question, if it was town or well water.
Yeah, a lot of towns will ask us for that certification, and the excavation contractors we use are DEP certified for waterfront. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So, because I'm new to all of this, and I got things coming from every direction here.
Sure.
So, it's just so I clearly understand, so we know what our choices are, that we get an easement on the deed.
For the back lot.
That's the question, is it the back lot that we get the easement on?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, or
Yeah.
the option is we disconnect the leach field.
Yeah, but you still have to put an alarm system on it.
We already have an alarm
Yeah.
system.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a pump tank.
So
How's that?
could they just disconnect it, or do they have to replace it with a different tank maybe?
No, that has to be disconnected completely and be a holding tank, it's a holding tank.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we have a holding tank now.
Yeah, with no leach field, it gets pumped annually.
I think it's 1,000 or 1,500 gallons.
Overflow, is that-
Overflow into the water. I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like a leach field is a better solution.
The easement
That's why we did
by
that.
far
That's
is,
exactly why we did
the easement on the back lot is a responsible thing. That way it can stand on its
I
own,
think you
it's
just
deeded.
need record somewhere,
Yeah.
just so that in the future, if
Yeah.
those lots get divided, there's no surprises for anyone on
Right.
the inside.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, those are the two options. I'm not saying you need to do that in order to get approved. That would be a condition of the approval. So we would, if we held a vote and your application, everybody said yes, or we got the majority to say yes,
Yes.
it would be on the condition that this deed was updated, amended, recorded by your county.
Okay.
What are the questions?
Is that something we do off the main office? Oh, you can.
State.
I can help.
State.
Yeah, I don't know about
I
these,
don't know.
other than we get them for our stuff.
He said he was had it.
Yeah.
And letters from your butters, please,
Yes, I'll do that, yeah.
or emails, excuse me, yeah.
Emails, however, whichever.
Well, whatever's easiest for you.
No text message.
No crayons. No.
It's a new world with this texting thing.
And I understand that you guys have been going through this process for years.
Years.
I think the last time we saw you guys, did you guys get pushed to the appeals board? Is that what happened, or they had to
That
go
was a
back?
long time
From
ago.
what I,
Okay.
from what I remember the last time, well, not the last time, the time before, they had approached us. However, at the time, the ordinance had not been
Right.
Adopted.
adopted
right.
yet.
Yeah.
So we weren't able to do anything simply because we were still on,
Okay,
you know,
yeah.
the old ordinances.
I thought we held a vote. No, that was
I don't
something
think
else.
so.
Okay,
We voted on it.
yeah. Okay.
We like the bad penny, it just keeps coming back.
I think you guys just like us.
Well, you're-
We like you.
You're also in a very unique situation, having split, you know, two separate lots.
Sure.
And
So, right.
I understand that this is a painful process to improve something that you guys own, so I apologize for that pain. I will say, though, that the bright side of the coin for us is it's always a learning experience to go through things like this, so thank you for helping us learn.
Okay.
And I apologize again for all of my emotions over the years, but I'm very, when it comes to
Yeah,
West Pond and
everyone's
camp
passionate about their
my parents, I get a little emotional, so.
One more question I have for you. I know you're a member of the committee that's making sure the quality of the water in West Pond stays good. Have you figured out why the invasive species got there? Did somebody put a boat in and carried it, or you're not sure?
We can't really say exactly what happened, but our thought was there was a owner that had one of those jet boats, and when this weed arrived, this particular owner sold really quickly, and nobody really thought anything of it, just thought that they sold. Well, come to find out, after doing, some of the people in the association did a little investigating, and come to find out, he lives in a Massachusetts town way, I don't know, west of Mass, or wherever it is, so wherever he lives, there's a lake or pond in his town that has really. So that's the only thing I could think of. They said it was either that, or it could have even been something as simple as if somebody had an aquarium in their camp, and
Right.
at the end of the season, they dumped their aquarium with their exotic, green, in the water. I mean, it could have been something like that, but we're thinking more likely it might have come in from that boat, because he used to have trouble really know how to run the boat, and he'd kind of go out and he'd stop in the middle, and then he'd like reverse the jets, and he'd do all kinds of weird, we would be like, what is he doing out there? Well, then it happened. But the good thing is with all our hard work and all the donations from, our landowners and the countless hours, we have gone from this year versus last year, when they did the survey in the fall, they've gone from bringing in hundreds of fish totes to only 30, because we pay to have these divers, certified divers, come in for 3 weeks every spring, and then we also have our president Dennis Finney, who dives, and so once the divers are gone, then he does it, and we all help topside, and countless hours and countless, with the nets, if you're on your kayak and you see one floating around, so, but it's, knock on wood, it's paying off. I mean, the problem is it's not something that we can ever stop doing, because it only takes one Turion, one seed to make hundreds of.
We'll never be out of the woods, but
No, we won't.
we're trying to manage it.
Yeah, but it's working, so.
Appreciate those efforts, I really do. It's a beautiful place.
Well, we certainly don't want to turn into a swamp, that's for sure, we'd be heartsick, so.
If you guys do get the capacity and as long-term members of this community, Cliff here is leading a committee for the comprehensive plan.
Upgrading our comprehensive plan. Yep, and If you're interested in coming to one of our meetings,
Oh, very nice.
I've got a whole list of meetings you can attend.
Excellent, excellent.
Well, I'm hoping to someday retire, so
Yeah,
I'll have free
exactly.
time.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
I think that's all we have for you.
Okay.
So,
You have anything else?
yeah, we would basically reconvene, next Tuesday.
And next
our
Tuesday,
normal
yeah.
planning board meeting.
Okay.
Should be about quicker.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
All right, we're gonna take a 5-minute break really quick, and then we go on to the next. Do something.
I asked him,
See how we'll get that thing to you? Want to print it out?
Hey, what's up, man?
Yeah, pretty cool. Damn one.
Quality.
Go online. Dr. Danforth.
never put fertilizer on it. And this, and I mean, it's just the weather. You sound like.
How you doing? All right, hanging in there. Hopefully we can get some.
Where they're at.
Oh, well. Yeah.
It says the down the hill.
6 by 6.
On, top layer on, it's 90 degrees and all.
Yeah, that's real good work.
Good work.
So you can incorporate that into a design somewhere, like you'll keep the mortise work in the actual beams and like whatever.
But it's gonna never. I think that's right. What part of it are you doing? What part? You've been in there? Yeah, like the first like knee issue, the forefront.
Big room in this big one, way longer than three offices and
Isn't there like another one next to that?
Just the look and the having the old
And they live takes down on the left from Judy. Their grass.
I wouldn't mind, then I don't have to drive an hour to get myself on.
So you got most of what you need? You still need a few?
What I had to go, we had to go through.
You need that one line that had to sort of rise in some spots.
that way. And to fit you even more.
Yeah. No, I know that.
Right, and you drive 2 miles.
Right.
Right, talking wood.
I'd rather like the money go to my town and not like, 45 minutes away.
No. Put a flooring store.
Yeah.
I thought you might have been in my backyard with a flashlight.
Friday, I was, no, Friday.
When's your next,
4 days in it, 1 day in a health permit. Luxury vinyl.
How you doing, young lady?
Did your wife retire? She retired, right? Did your wife retire? Her last place of employment was in Eagle, right?
We don't really structure it, but we just say that part of the vision.
Yeah. I don't miss it. It's my job.
Stripes is a shadow.
Well, I just came back from Massachusetts, Southern Mass, and when we left, it was almost 50 degrees. Everything was melting, the sun was out, I could smell spring. And then we came home.
Coming off my
My bonnet's above the first floor windows and door. But I've had it above my kitchen windows before, where I didn't even have to pull shades or anything.
We'll see what it does in
Up in front of my house, there's a big hole because they pushed the snow back so far.
Yeah, well, wait till you get that file saved. That's like a 1990s computer, well, 2000. They don't have the updated version of Excel, so yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Looks like what we used to have.
I was the gorilla at the first meeting and I don't know anything in the next one. I haven't been in on this path to never really know what's going on. Just tell me what the law says and I'll say, okay.
Yeah, no, this is old. Again, this is just maybe some things we can pull from, but you see here how everything's.
It's here.
Construction facility. There's some it's kind of old outdated stuff. Yeah, it is, and that's what we're using.
All right. We can get started with this one.
Anybody who's here for the next workshop are getting started?
Except for Mary. Oh, there you go. All right. If I can get everybody to take a seat really quick, so we can all get out of here in peace now. Yeah. You're like, keep me here.
Here, there, so away.
All right. If I can get everybody to please, I call this meeting order. I need a gavel. Can I get a gavel?
Sure.
Is that a thing? All right.
How about I just slow his hammer?
That would work. So we're here on this workshop to talk about two things. Recreational marijuana and medical marijuana. Medical marijuana is going to take the forefront of the conversation, of the ordinances, excuse me. Because we as a town need to propose ordinance for a vote to the town of Parsonsfield. Now, we need to do that for medical marijuana, we need to do that for recreational marijuana. In order to do that, we need, number one, we need to craft and agree on, as a board, a proposal to vote, okay? Now, what you guys, I passed out to you here, it says Article 1. I took some time and I wrote out, this is for retail marijuana social clubs. I'm just using this as an example. There might be some spelling errors in here too. This isn't a finished draft, okay? But this is an example of a proposal that we would put before the town just for a yes or no vote. The original intent, what I had hoped that we could do, was take something like this, Article 1, and I'll read through it here for everybody who's here. The question is, shall the town allow recreational marijuana social clubs as defined in 7 MRSA Section 242, subsection 39? That's the question before the town, okay? These articles might have been updated. This was written a while ago. I'm just using this as an example. Then it explains, Trevor, do you still have the paper? You can just pass it around after you're done. So everybody can take a look at this. It explains a retail marijuana social club, what the definition is according to the state, and then land use. If passed, social clubs will be permitted as followed. Now, in our land use documents, our land use ordinance, we have a set of, I'm explaining this for the public and for us, just to talk through this, okay? So.
This is marijuana for dummies.
Right, yeah. So, as you guys can see, this is our land use ordinance. This is all the different land uses of things that we have put ordinances for in the town of Parsonsfield. That includes medical offices, automotive body shops, car washes, you guys get the picture, restaurants, taverns, shopping centers, transmission towers, whatever they might be. At some point during the history of Parsonsfield, somebody sat down and said, should we allow this in village residential, rural residential, farm and forest, light industrial, public works, and then RC, which I think is resource conservation. So at some point, somebody said, hey, it would be a good idea for us to have this, whatever it might be, printing and photocopying in village. And it was put before the town, and the town said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's vote that in, or you know what, doesn't sound like a good idea. Let's vote that in, and the majority won. We're doing the exact same thing with marijuana. We're not treating it any different than any other land use that's out there. The initial intent was for us to put this article forth and have the town decide, hey, I think it's a good idea that it goes in village, so I'll put yes in village. I think it's a bad idea that goes in village residential, so I'll put a no in village residential. We ran into a roadblock with that, and we were told that we couldn't allow that wide range of a vote. It had to either be a yes or no vote. So that's where the complication comes in. Because we as a board have to decide, and I think this is what Jesse, the CEO, kind of gave us a example of. For medical marijuana, we have to decide, is it a good idea for us to propose to the town for cultivation of medical marijuana? Should it be allowed? Should it have a site plan review? Should it have special exemptions? Or should it just be prohibited completely? That's what gets most complicated, because nobody agrees on one way or the other. So it's going to come down to a majority of a vote of how this is going to go. So, if you guys have seen this Article 1 that we did up, it has a excerpt of the land use ordinance with what we're talking about specifically. So this one says recreational marijuana social club. Under village residential, it's got an N. And if you look down to the, what's it called on the map? The key, thank you. You see N is prohibited use. Prohibited use in village residential, prohibited use in rural residential, and then an S in farm and forest, which is a special exemption permit from the planning board, and a C in light industrial, which requires a conditional permit from the planning board. Now, in order to kind of back those things up, to make sure that we, as a board, and as a town, have a little bit of say, if we were, as a board, to get an applicant, pass an applicant through, and they were doing like such a disgrace to the town, violating laws and whatever else, and they weren't shut down by the CEO, we can put a clause in this ordinance, which is what the next line is. It says the town has a right to revoke a PO with a 60-day notice for any business with good clause, Title 7 MRSA, Section 242, subsection 13. This was a part of the original marijuana, and this is retail again, marijuana like stuff the state came up with. And then it defines good cause. Good cause for purpose of denial of an initial license application or denial of a renewal or reinstatement of a license application means the license or applicant has violated, does not meet, or fail to comply with any of the terms, conditions, provisions of this chapter, any rules adopted pursuant to it, or any supplemental relevant state or local laws, rule or regulation, or some code I'm not going to read out. The next section says a licensee or applicant has failed to comply with any special terms, consent decree, or conditions that were placed upon the license pursuant to the order of the state licensing authority or relevant municipality. And a prohibition of marijuana social clubs, so if you were to vote no on this article specifically, would not affect personal use or possession of marijuana or existing medical marijuana permitted uses. We're talking about specifically this. So the way that this is crafted right now, and I hope that we either improve upon this format or we keep it because it's kind of simple, is we define what it is, we define where it's allowed to be, we define what permit needs to happen, whether it's special use, an exemption, whatever it might be. We put in a clause that says that we can revoke approval with good cause, and that if somebody votes no on this, that means it's not going to affect any existing state personal or medical rights to carry and smoke marijuana.
Just recreational.
Right.
Sale of.
The sale, yeah, so this specifically is, yeah, the recreational one. But if this ordinance is passed, then it would take effect within, and I put when the state moratorium expires, for state regulation.
Hasn't it already?
The state moratorium?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it would be effective immediately.
yeah, like I said, this was written a while ago.
That's what I had in my head.
And then at the bottom you have a yes vote or no vote, okay? So my proposal to the board is that we take this format and we do two separate town votes, two special meetings. We do one for recreational, and we have 5 articles that people vote for. We do a special town meeting and a public hearing for medical, because we have to do it for both. And we have, I think it's 4 articles. I don't hold me on that, but like the cultivation, here's cultivation, retail stores, manufacturing, and testing. But have you looked at the medical stuff lately, the laws?
I've got a copy of it right here. I haven't really, not thoroughly, but I've.
What did they divide it into like the same as recreational?
Roughly, it's going to be some of the same stuff, right? You're going to have extraction facilities, grows, retails, so, it would be somewhat similar.
Yeah.
I don't know if extraction facilities fall within the medical. I guess it does. I guess that's going to be dual purpose also. So I guess what are you thinking? Where we would start is we would decide what zones we would propose what activities in, right?
Correct. And so before we do that, we just need to define like what the 4 or 5 subsections are for the articles.
Right.
So the first one would be medical, is it retail stores? Is that's what it's defined as?
Yes, we're getting into,
It's retail stores, storefront, 2 different.
I don't know what the new one says. So that's a
let me
question.
see if I can actually figure it out here. It would be, of course, it's going to be retail, and then there's going to be cultivation, and then there's gonna be, extraction, and then I think commercial kitchens, right? So,
Is that a question?
that was it for me?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
With testing?
Yes, right, but, is that under the medical program, or is that just general, you know, I mean, testing is testing, right?
You said you had the medical.
Yes, I do here. Flip through it, let's see. Here we go. Tier 1 manufacturing, Tier 2 manufacturing. Cultivation.
Well, you're looking through that. Let's see. Grab some chalk. Okay, so I want to clearly define, I'm going to stand right behind you if you don't mind. So I just want to clearly define for us as a board. So first, you know, it's going to be in that medical, recreational, over here. So first, we're going to define the 4 to 5 articles, and then put them as each as a separate page to vote upon. So define articles. All right. I know you guys can't read this.
It's bringing back bad memories.
Yeah. Define articles, and then it's where it's permitted. And then it's, what's it called? The public hearing, it's hearing, yeah.
It's a hearing.
Yeah. Public hearing. And then special.
Oh, yeah. What's the chalkboard?
Okay, meeting.
Brings back sound memories.
Right. So,
I would need the eraser on that.
these that you gave us, Jesse.
Yep.
So, can you walk me through what you submitted?
Well, I met with Trevor and Will,
Okay.
and we're trying to put some stuff together, I guess. Yep. So, permitted uses for village, rural, farm and forest, light industrial. It pretty much spelled out for you.
Right. So, okay, I just want to know like where it came from and how you
We just
decided on
put this
where as well.
brings together.
Is this what the picture was? Oh, so I still have that.
Picture from the chalkboard.
It's slightly different, that was the adult use, so this is a little bit different because it's medical.
Right.
Oh, I thought we were doing medical that night on the work.
No, that was adult, it was adult use, because remember we had social clubs in there, things like that. Super similar, and pretty similar in there, just the way it shakes out. Because we kind of did the same process.
Right.
you know.
So,
Kind of wanted to give you guys a format to go by.
uh-huh.
You know,
I can add one more thing.
it mirrors what's already in our ordinance.
Okay. And so PC though. So
Yeah, that's both of them. I kind of put both of them.
okay.
They could be either, B and C. But both of them, like under 500 square feet, would go through the CEO for cultivation.
Okay.
Okay, in that area. If it's bigger than that, it would be a conditional use permit by the planning board.
So when it comes to cultivation though, so let's say we're talking about a private, is there such thing as a private medical marijuana grower?
No.
Out of the home, right?
Still have to have cultivation.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Large cultivations where they're gonna grow medical marijuana
Mm-hmm.
for, permanent individuals.
Right. So are you suggesting that those people that are operating out of the house, they have to go to the CEO now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanna put ordinances forth that they can't operate out of their house. They need to have a separate building.
I don't know about that. How are we gonna tell people who've been operating out of their house for
Yeah.
years that they gotta get out of their houses to a separate building?
Okay, no, you gotta hear me out. I'm just putting it out there.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
the trailers are burning down.
Where?
Okay, they're
They're gonna?
underwired.
Wait.
You're making some assumptions and some leaps there, Jesse, you are.
If it's personal use, they're allowed 3 plants per adult that's in that.
Okay,
That's all, they can do that in their house.
right.
But if they're gonna grow 36 plants in their basement, there's gonna be high heat, there's gonna be.
So my question, wait, before we get into a debate on anything, so my question is, the state currently, the state of Maine, allows medical marijuana to be, grown and dispensed at a home if the person is a licensed caregiver.
Exactly.
So that would be basically an addition that you're proposing that Parsons Field would place above the state minimums.
You know, I'm just putting it out there.
Okay.
That's my feeling.
Right. And that's okay. I mean, this is a workshop where we're talking this stuff through, so, okay.
And a cultivation spot should be, you know, inspected for electrical, by the state electrical inspector
Mhm.
to be able to operate.
That's, okay, fair enough. Yeah, so so a question in that, so if somebody modifies their home electric to, let's say, include like a grow room in their basement,
Yeah.
are they supposed to apply for a building permit through Parsons Field?
No,
They don't have to?
no.
Okay.
Got a question.
You can modify
We-
your electric.
We don't permit grows
Right.
now.
I know we don't do it right now.
No.
And I'm not talking about a grow itself, I'm talking about electrical use. Like if somebody,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any electrical work that you do,
I don't inspect any electrical. It's all done through the state. I have everybody, if they're gonna do any electrical work, they have to sign a 1360 form, which goes to CMP. If there isn't a master electrician's license number on that form, the state inspector gets a hold of the people and he schedules an appointment to go inspect.
yeah, well,
Just a point of clarification, there's 3 different classifications for growing. There's the recreational 3 plant minimum, or maximum rather. There's your individual patient card, which is entitling you to 6 plants. And then there's your caregiver card, which entitles you to grow 30, plus your personal 3. And of course, if you're a patient, the additional 6. So there is something there that you could consider to be private medical. So it might be worthwhile to take a look at the idea that private medical, 6 to 9 plants, or in the case that you cohabitate with another person who needs that medicine, at most 12 to 15 could be, you know, sectioned off as a private type of grow, where a cultivator, a commercial caregiver who can do a higher amount is sort of a different type of growing apparatus, right? Because that isn't really privately for him, only 6 of those plants are. And then recreational is the 3 plants that everyone can partake in. So, just something to consider.
so I don't think that we're gonna put anything in the ordinance as far as personal growth or personal use, because the state has already covered that. And we're not changing the land use of anybody's home or anything like that. So the question will really come back to, if we define it as a land use for cultivation, you're saying that maybe as a caveat, we should define 2 different tiers between,
How many plants?
Essentially,
plants.
medical cultivation
right?
could be considered personal for 6 plants. But if you get the license from the state, like myself and many other growers, you are operating around 30 to 36 to 39 plants. That's obviously a different thing. I don't know that I would limit where it can be done, maybe amount, something like that. But another, possibly helpful way to kind of attack this is to look at each one of these uses, which already has state guidelines that we can't be less stringent than, so we have an idea where they are, and it might give you an idea kind of the type of regulation that's used,
I
So-
think that
So I've got three land uses from the state in front of me. It says medical land use. I'm sorry, this isn't from the state. This is from somebody else's.
yeah, that's just, that's not from the state. That's just
Okay.
kind of some structure there that we can
Okay.
work with.
All right, so what they defined it as was 3 different classes, and I'm assuming this is probably Cornish, Limerick or something.
Yeah, somewhere local.
Yeah.
That's nothing, like I said,
Right.
it's something we can base what we go off
Right,
of.
so they defined it as 3 separate medical land uses. They defined it as medical cannabis home production, medical cannabis production facility, and then medical cannabis registered dispensary. Now, the,
Did they give you any quantities of how many plants each one of them?
I'll read through each one, they're not that long. It's, so the medical cannabis home production, cultivating, processing, and/or storing of medical cannabis by a qualified patient at their primary year-round residence or registered medical cannabis caregiver at their own primary year-round residence for the use by a qualifying patient. This definition shall also extend to registered cannabis caregivers who cultivate, process, or store medical cannabis in a qualifying patient's primary year-round residence for that qualifying patient's sole use. So basically, they're saying
No limit, they don't have a limit?
the state limits would apply. They're saying the registered caregiver who can grow up to 30 plants and the cohabitant as such. They don't have defined numbers in here, but I think that defining numbers
It's gonna
might.
be, because what happens if then all of a sudden the law changes, then we have to go back and
Right.
address the number.
So,
Right.
It needs to be a more generic.
So,
Yeah,
it's just taken for granted you're gonna follow what the state requires.
state requirements are. And we can, and in this proposal of structure in here, what we do is, in the first thing, put as defined in the state law by line. So if that changes on their side, then that's whatever it is on their side, we can reference to. The next one, medical cannabis production facility used for cultivating, processing, and/or storing medical cannabis by one or more registered medical cannabis caregivers at a location which is not the registered medical cannabis caregiver's primary year-round residence or the patient's primary year-round residence. This shall be considered a commercial use. So, yeah, we're talking about a house, basically, talking about a separate facility, and then we have registered dispensary, a non-for-profit entity registered pursuant to state laws.
Not-for-profit, I think you can scratch that,
Yeah.
that's old.
Yeah. That acquires, possesses, cultivates, manufactures, delivers, transfers, transports, sells, supplies, or dispenses cannabis, paraphernalia, or related supplies and educational materials to qualifying patients. So what they've done is they've defined it into 3 separate things. It's not bad.
You know, and that's just something
Yeah.
we can use loosely as we move forward.
Yeah.
You know, it speaks to what Will was talking about, the separation to some degree.
Yeah. So you have the state laws still in front of you?
Yes, I do. If you're looking at, you know, the different articles, it would be cultivation, then 2 tiers in extraction, retail, food establishment, and testing.
Food establishment. Does it have a definition in there?
Definition?
Of a food establishment?
I think that's just the word I used. I
Okay.
don't know if it says food establishment.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I was just curious.
It said,
Making up words over here.
yeah, right.
I'll take the
Kitchens?
number 4,
Yeah.
20 combo, please.
Hey, don't knock it.
Let's see.
Yeah.
They've already
Food
tried to do
establishment
that.
license required to
Different things
manufacture
in
food
corner.
products.
Sounds like
Registered
we'll
manufacturing facility or a person authorized to produce marijuana concentrates using inherently hazardous substances.
So, yeah.
So each one
So,
of these has like its own restrictions already,
Mhm.
that like, it would be just nice to see them so that you know, like, for instance, it's easy to think, okay, this is allowed here, it's just allowed here. But if we know like what the already limiting factors are, it might lead more people to be taking like an educated opinion on like
Yeah.
what it really means to be there. Because it's like, to say it could be in village doesn't really mean it could be in village when you take in all of, you know, the other buffer requirements or size requirements, or, you know what I mean?
So would, and this is just a proposal, so if we were to define the 4 subcategories that are defined in the law, like medical, retail storefront, whatever the language might be.
Right.
Medical testing and processing, medical cultivation, and medical food stores.
Right.
Let's just say that. We would define those 4 things as articles to vote upon. During the public hearing, if in discussing each of those articles, we were to provide to the public the state, a printout of the state laws and regulations on each one, and describe to the public and say, hey, listen, this is what is being proposed, this is the land use areas that we're proposing, and you as a member of the public need to understand that these are the restrictions that the state has in addition to what our land use ordinance is. Would that satisfy, like?
Yeah, I think that would help just a lot of people even during the conversation kind of understanding like what we're really talking about. Because I think it's a good idea to look at the 3 different categories. I think that they're pretty much already, made by the state because they license you to be a caregiver, they prescribe you something to say that you can be a patient, and they authorize you through doctrine to say that you can grow tree plants. So it's like, nice thing is you don't need to worry about numbers because the definition might change, but if you use that wording, like if you used a certified caregiver or cultivating caregiver, a cultivating patient, and a resident with the right to grow, those definitions will be updated by the state, but it shouldn't affect our ordinance. It's not like we had a hard number like 29 or 13 or anything like that. It should be something we maybe wouldn't have to come back and address again if we use those standards. Kind of what Nate was kind of alluding to right there.
So, all right, okay, so thank you guys for bearing with me. I'm a very linear thinker. Block charts are probably one of my favorite things in the world. And so like when I talk, what I try to do is define things in sequential, thank you, order. So if we're defining the articles, so the first subsection of that is defining what the correct verbiage is in accordance with the state, okay? We take that, we put it in the top of this article here. So and we explain what the definition is in accordance with the state. Now, the biggest contention that we are going to have as a board of deciding is the next portion, the what belongs where.
Where it should go.
Right. Now, do you guys?
I don't think it's that hard.
Okay.
I know, and you guys have worked on this one forever.
No, I'm glad you don't, because it's honestly not. For me to do it, I don't think it's hard for you to do it, but it's hard as a consensus to agree on what's best for the town. That's where the challenge comes in. So.
You mean all agreeing on the same thing?
Yeah, I think that one of the earliest workshops that we did on this was, is this it?
Yeah, that's an old one.
Oh yeah, so this wasn't the first one we did, but the first one we did was a public hearing. And during the public hearing, we asked the audience, like, hey, where do you think would be good?
Right.
And like people were like, well, I don't know. There wasn't a whole lot of input. And then there was this workshop, and then there was a vote taken from the residents in attendance. How many people were there?
I don't know, 15 maybe?
Yeah. So we're taking like less than what? 1%? No. Of the population, Parsonsfield?
But again, like if people aren't gonna come out,
Right.
we can't speak for them, and they have their rights to be here. That's why we at least use this as a draft. Then we take it to the public hearing, which I would hope would have a larger turnout.
Correct.
For greater input. But we have to have something in front of people. It's too much to ask a large audience to be like, what do you think about this? It has to be like, here's our plan. What do you want to change?
Right.
Don't ask the question. Tell them what it is and give them the time to address it.
So if I'm remembering back, I think one of the recommendations that we discussed to try and get more input from the community was sending out a mailer. A mailer kind of like this to every resident in Parsonsfield saying, listen, this is an issue that's coming up. We would like input from the community. If you could please just fill out what you would like this to be and mail it back. Well, I'm just saying that was a recommendation, and, you know, the more I think about it, I don't know,
We're, the comprehensive plan group is getting ready to put together a very intensive survey that's gonna go, if people can pick it up here, they can download it off our website. We're working with, a Survey Monkey. We might be able to put a question or two on there about marijuana, which might be able to help.
Might be a little too muddied, you know, without, if it's an intensive survey, you know, to throw that in there, you know, I think we wanna like, you know, separate it and give its own focus.
well,
Well,
what
it's
is
not-
a survey monkey? I'm sorry.
It's an application, an
Okay.
organization that can get you a survey.
I mean, yeah, we could put, I mean,
Okay.
I mean,
if you wanted to do a
think it's
survey,
that
we could
muddy.
put something on the town
Yeah, I don't think it's
website.
that muddy. We make it very simple, just so we can
Right.
get some kind of information to work
I mean, you could like.
When are you
send it
proposing
out.
on sending that out?
Probably in the next week or two, it's gonna, so we might be able to put, you know, a question or two, very simplicity, nothing too intense. How do you feel about marijuana coming into our town, commercial, if the state's passed a law, would you like it to be confined to where?
So,
I just feel like it's.
I'm curious about the, this is how I know I'm getting old, because I put the title "the" before something, you know how older people say the computer or the TV. So with the Survey Monkey, who's heading that up? Like if
We are, the whole board. I've got
Okay.
3 people, one guy is working on it. He has done a lot of surveys in his life, so he's setting it up. The people come in, pick one up, a physical one,
Uh-huh.
and they can go to the town website and they can click on Survey Monkey and it will automatically give them the survey to fill out, download it, print it, bring it in, and
We used it a lot in school.
I love this.
and on top of that, we're holding a carrot out for everybody, because the survey's gonna take 45 minutes to do it. It's not like a 2-minute survey.
Right.
It's like 10 pages.
So if we were to do our own survey, Les Survey Monkey, for medical marijuana and a separate one for retail marijuana, it's feasible for people to go onto the town website and we can have them pick out certain. What do you guys think about that? Would that be something you think would be useful? Yeah?
I mean, it
Not everybody has a
Getting
zoning
word
map.
out.
Yeah.
What's that?
Not everybody has a zoning map.
Yeah.
Where do you want this? Can we put it on 160?
yeah.
You know?
A lot of people don't even know if there's more than one.
Well,
Yeah.
you could put
Oh,
a,
yeah, but you can tell them that they,
have
the zoning map is
right
on the, oh no, not the big one. The colored map is not,
Can you
it's
put it in
not,
the survey?
it's not in the land use
And it's
ordinance.
so small when you,
I don't
when you
have
emphasize
one.
that map, it's
Because it's
super
not in the
small,
land use
hard to
ordinance
tell.
anymore.
I don't know, again, like, I think you're just, my opinion on it is like, you know, we've already, you're just gonna open up people to just continue to argue whether or not it should be used or not, when we're kind of past that, like, we have laws in place, like, I think, again, we just need to lay it out, and again, you know, it's, don't give them, you know.
Too much leeway?
Yeah, I mean, it's like don't give them
We
a
sound
question.
like government officials, right? Don't give them too much, but you're right, no, I agree, you're absolutely right. No, you're right, because we've been spinning our wheels for quite some time on this, you're right, so I agree with Nate, I think we should just lay it out,
Okay.
you know.
And
we
then
should
here's
give-
what we're proposing, you know, and then that gives people a point to talk about, you know, what our job is to get the ordinance in place, not whether it's right or wrong.
Right.
Because
Right,
I think
yeah.
if you add it into a survey at this point,
Yeah.
you're just gonna have people arguing again for the billionth time,
Fair
whether
enough.
it's right or wrong,
And-
their own personal views. That's not what we're gonna do. It's passed, it's legal. Here's where we're proposing we place it. Here
Right.
are the state regulations around it. You know, like, you know, if someone's concerned about being in village residential, well, there's a daycare in village.
Right.
Cool, well, there's a state level
Yeah,
buffer
there's
already
rules.
about that, so here's that.
So then what we need to get down to is we need to get
Where
down
do
to
we put it?
figuring out what we're gonna offer up as far as
And I
what's
mean,
allowed in
this
each
is not a
zone.
bad start, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, it's a good start, what you've got, and I think ultimately, if you wanna bring on a lot of people, because eventually you're gonna have a public hearing to vote,
Yeah.
you got to have a bunch of public discussions and advertising in the shopper's guide. And get
we
people,
had
you know,
those.
I know you have these here, but you're gonna have
Yes,
to,
we have.
you have to keep bringing it until you get more input. And you may
I think
get
the input
30
though
people.
is we need to have something in place to get like input.
I agree.
So let's do it. Let's do it.
So it's like, if we were just to walk through these right now and just say, what do we want to change on them? Cross out N or P or C or whatever we want, and then base that off of our.
And then just type it in.
And then type it
So-
into this format.
Yeah, I don't have any reservation on that. The only thing, like, and I'm kind of a stickler, just so we make sure we're going by the state's format, is to make sure that these 4 subsections here, cultivation, retail stores, manufacturing, testing,
so that's-
are actually what the state has defined them as. What do you got, Will?
To Nate's point, I think when we did that previous chart, we actually boiled it down to the idea that there's really nothing that empowers us to go gather information with an official tally to it. You know, like we were talking about informal mailers and Facebook and online check-in things, but we decided, I think we got to a point where we looked at it and we were like, technically we could like take it in and certainly look at it, but it pretty much dictates that you gotta like look at the uses and be like, it's most similar to this.
It's kind of asking them to do our job.
Right, exactly. It seems like they kind of forced our hand. That's why we ended up with the chart, I think, last time. It's a long time ago, but I think we were like, oh, we really can't do that. We literally just have to go through and be like, what is this most similar to? And throw it out there and see if they like it. And, you know, Nate pretty much nailed it.
What are you looking for definitions?
Yeah, well, so,
Food establishment is one of the definitions right there.
But I mean, but could food establishment be, you know, a subcategory? Like we don't.
It's actually defined pretty thoroughly right
yeah,
there. so
actually,
I think-
yeah, so,
That's
food establishment, and then it's got a definition here,
okay. So
which is crazy. So this is medical, though?
That's a separate thing they put in the beginning of the bill.
Yeah, that defines all the language, I think, you know, or your definitions.
Okay, food establishment.
Food established, whether it's marijuana or not, gotta go by what they're.
Medical extraction, medical concentration, manufacturing.
This,
Okay, wait, so,
that's what I think.
see the registered dispensary, medical testing facility.
So it's,
So who's gonna supply the bakery in town?
So the recreational bill
Gonna be the
has,
woman in town.
This is the medical, this is all,
Right,
all
right.
medical.
well, I was just trying to explain the recreational bill. It says that, you know, it's subdivided into these different things, and then it's got a reference to where the definitions are.
Right.
And I don't know if this,
Here's the separate bill for extractions too. This is the LD 238. I don't know if you want to look through that. It's a separate one.
okay, so that's.
but could we say like again, like have a maybe like a header category, like manufacturing, which includes this,
Right.
and this, and this.
Right.
I mean, is that broken down?
I wouldn't say manufacturing. I don't know
Because
actually.
like would extraction count as manufacturing?
No, I think it's specifically extraction. There's a whole separate bill for extraction. That's a complete separate bill in itself. And it's a two-tiered thing.
Yeah, so I think we need to basically move down to what are the categories that these are broken.
So,
Take
yeah.
the 4 categories and
I
decide.
think it would
I mean,
be
you can start with the major 4.
It'd be pretty close to that. That's pretty much as I think too. Yeah, pretty close to that.
A chart with all 4 broken down,
Right.
categories of it.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at. We just need to make sure are there 4 or are there 17?
We have it.
You know, I don't know. I need, you know, we need to really
Okay.
think through this.
All right, so we've got,
An Excel sheet.
conduct, yeah, I think I'm onto it. So we've got medical marijuana manufacturing facilities, which is 2423-F. We've got 2428, which is registered dispensaries. Packaging labeling requirements.
We know there's gotta be cultivation.
Right. You know,
It's not really,
no. So,
it's not what we're looking for, which is
Right.
obviously broken out.
so I know that the recreational side has it broken out very nicely. And I think that even though the medical, the medical laws are obviously different than the recreational one, using just that organization of what it's broken out into might make sense. You know, it might be easier for us because we're basically taking, instead of saying marijuana social clubs.
Well, I think all the categories are the same. There's no special category in medical that doesn't exist in recreational. So if you're going to use the structure for a breakdown of recreational, it should carry over at least.
Are there social clubs from
No,
medical?
there's no.
Okay, so
no
that's the
social
only
clubs
one.
at all.
Yeah. So let me pull up the ones I had for recreational. They're on the computer back here. All right, so.
So then the only thing left over would be extraction, tier 1, tier 2 extraction, which I don't know where you want to put that in, but you didn't mention that.
Manufacturing.
Right.
I'm gonna slip it in there.
But there are two separate tiers, right? There's the alcohol extraction, which is pretty harmless, and then there's that hazardous material extraction.
Okay.
So well, I think what we had before it wasn't extraction, but we did have 2 tiers of manufacturing, which was basically the same. So you had one, which was like low hazard or no hazard.
Right,
manufacturing
yeah.
Versus a tier 2, which.
Yes.
So it sounds like, maybe just change the word extraction and do, manufacturing, so product manufacturing facility, tier 1, tier 2.
I don't know, in the extraction bill, I mean, is the language specific with the extraction, or does it say manufacturing? I mean, if it does say extraction, we might want to stick with that language.
So, yeah.
I mean, if it's.
So I
I think
think,
it is a separate law.
yeah.
Yeah, he's got it up there, 238, and I didn't know if the language in there says extraction or manufacturing. Manufacturing's pretty broad.
It says
It is.
inherently hazardous substance, manufacturer or manufacturing.
There you go, all right.
Manufacturing facility, marijuana concentrate, extraction, product, which were all subsets of section 1. So they kind of look like.
So why don't we say manufacturing / extraction? And then as sub-bullets in that proposal, we'll define, or in that article, we'll make sure to define that there are 2 separate categories.
Right.
One's hazardous, one's low hazardous.
Right, yeah, right, less hazardous. Hazardless.
You could have a tier 3 as a blank, and as things move along, you can.
No, that's not.
Plug it in.
Yeah.
No.
Meaning it become more hazardous?
Yeah, something unexpected that is happening that we need to.
Tier 3 undetermined.
Right, what's that, a tier 3?
Just to be
Preparing for a tier 3.
Yes, sir.
On this extraction, make sure that the non-hazardous one, that along with the alcohol, you have the one with the simmering butter.
I think that's actually considered with the edible food, that's a food product. Butter's a food product, so.
So that's the one thing we don't have covered in here is where.
Food stores?
Food, yeah. Edible, like, would that be under, retail store could potentially sell it.
Right, but they have, when you're making food, yeah.
That would be a
Commercial
manufacturing.
kitchen.
It has to
type.
have a commercial kitchen. It has to be oriented. Yeah.
So where does that
Has to be in
fall? Or does that fall
conjunction with
under-
what?
That would fall under manufacturing, I would think, because you're extracting.
Food manufacturing.
Right.
Food manufacturing.
Yeah. Well, and so just hear me out. So manufacturing is taking something, right, and making it into something else, basically. So you're taking like a bud, you're breaking it down into the essential oils and extracting them out in there, like with that. And it'll be low hazard, not no hazard.
Right.
I think we could put any food stuff under manufacturing. I'm open to this. Yeah.
So the state has to come in, if you're doing the food establishment, they just need to come in and essentially inspect that you have a hood It can ventilate out like stainless steel. There's not much to it, but they have standards.
Right.
So,
Which is fine, we're just trying to define like the big the labels of what we're gonna tuck this under.
So their concern at the state level is making sure things don't catch fire. So it's like maybe make sure it's in a place that first responders can get to. You know, if it's the hazardous side of things.
What do you think? It should be separate from any manufacturing with extractions as far as a vote? I mean, that's kind of where we're at now.
The state makes it separate.
Right, so we should present it separately, right? Is that how,
For
it goes?
extraction,
I mean,
is that what you're saying?
sure.
I mean,
I don't
It
care.
doesn't hurt to, I just want, I want to make sure that we're, what am I trying to say?
CYA.
If we have too many categories.
Yeah,
Like
right.
we can lump in some of these into categories because we have states.
Right, okay, I got you.
We're just trying to figure out, if it's something that can catch fire at all.
Right.
Where could it go? And that could be the kitchen, that could be low hazard manufacturing. Again, there's gonna be the state level, broad, or, they have their, it's not broad, specific regulations around that. A tier 2 would be something more hazardous, so we definitely wouldn't want that near a school, because if it explodes, I don't know if it can explode, but if it could, we want that in maybe an industrial area. And then we have, sub, things under that, again, still regulated by the state in its own sense.
Right.
So we just sort of need to have a more umbrella view on what could, and catch everything in that.
And I think that.
As little pieces as we can, sorry.
I'm sorry. No, that example that you provided from whichever township that was, or town, what they did was they lumped it into 3 different things. We're talking about more than 3 things here, to try and be a bit more specific to a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think we need to have a state definition for everyone. We need to then have what our overarching categories are.
Right.
Still have the state definition of the things that fall into that with each little bullet point.
I agree.
But you need to have one header.
So what we have so far are retail stores, cultivation facility, testing facility, products manufacturing facility.
I kind of have those 2. It was probably the same thing now.
Okay.
Manufacturing tier 1 and tier 2.
Okay. Extraction as well. Yeah. Okay. So it's 4 separate categories that we have.
Yes.
Okay. Any objections from that? With that on the board members? So instead of So what we can do now that we've got 4 different categories is we can go through this same chart that we've gone through as a board right now, and I can write this up tomorrow or the next day. What do you got, man?
There's certain manufacturing facilities that don't do extractions. I mean, you have people who are taking product and putting them into, specifically just putting them into packaging, and should that be a separate category?
So you're talking about like taking,
kind of
put in a
like
bag?
a kitchen, like you take somebody's oil, in your kitchen, you're taking oil from somebody else, you're just mixing it up with your food or whatever, and then you're giving it back to them or patients, depending on how you're licensed.
So you're talking about
So you're not really extracting anything. There's no hazard involved.
Processing. But you're still
Processing. The 3rd level.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Is like
to
have a 3rd category.
Make this into like a realistic example, like brownies. Would that?
Sure.
Okay.
So you take somebody's oil, you mix it in with the brownies at this facility, and then you give it either back to them or you give it to a patient if you're licensed to do that. But you're not extracting anything.
Yeah.
There's
Actually,
no
that's a good point, because I had that question myself.
My point is like, there's no hazard involved whatsoever.
Yeah. So what would you say, what does the law state, are you allowed to do that in your own home without needing a commercial kitchen facility? I mean, is that?
I don't think you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, so you would need access to some type of something like a commercial kitchen facility, even just to dissolve your oil into a coconut oil or something, right? By the structure of the law.
Right.
So you're right, it's basically non-hazardous, no hazard at all, and it gets into the food establishment part of it.
Right.
So I don't know if we want to lump that stuff with extractions, And again, I don't know. You've got an idea of subcategories, which
you're going to have to have subcategories because you can't separate food out of it. You're going to have it in there somehow.
I agree. We're not saying it's not going to be in there. What I'm saying is, if for these you need a commercial grade kitchen or a hood or, you know, all of that stuff.
Right.
Again, I understand it's non-hazardous, but that's why in my thoughts here, tier 1 is no to little hazard.
Right.
Okay.
You know, see what I'm saying? Like, it's the lowest hazard you could possibly have, which would include no hazard, which could just be dropping oil into something. And that's just the overarching, you know, what we need to think about for zoning in the town. There's no effect of what the state says you can do or can't do. All we're trying to figure out is, you know, where would a commercial kitchen be placed now? You know, that's where we kind of would think most of the no to low hazard manufacturing would be someplace
Maybe low hazard
zoned near
could be in
those areas.
rural residential, low hazard.
For sure, yeah. I mean, where can you put a kitchen now? Where can you put a low hazard anything right now?
And this is where I think this gets really dangerous, because like we can go down the rabbit hole, and we really can, because this becomes such a qualifying thing, and if we can keep it to like 4 very broad categories, we're only looking at this for land use.
Right.
We're saying, okay, so do retail shops. Let's go around for retail shops and say, who thinks village is a good idea? Yes, requires a permit, or no? You know, and that's where I want to kind of keep this as broad as we can. But I do appreciate that, because it's a very valid point, man. Like, it is.
Because you could also be just strictly packaging. I mean, you could be just a packaging place, but you have to handle this marijuana, you know?
Processing too.
Correct.
So, okay.
Yeah, processing, does that fall under any of our categories? I mean, that is,
Would that
Manufacturing.
Well, yeah, I feel
Is
like
that
it's kind of like
manufacturing?
right, so that would go under the manufacturing
Potentially
category,
Yeah.
processing.
We can put limits, all right, how many, you know, hundreds are you doing, or, you know, so the limits could be corresponding to the zones where we permit it.
Yeah, we can put all kinds of caveats in there. Honestly, we can. It's defining like the big labels first, and then
Yeah.
what caveats will we throw in.
Right, yeah, you can't make rules on the 1 or 2 potential, it's like, you gotta start kind of the overarching, and then drill down, and then as things come up, oh yeah, that does make sense.
Block charts, baby. So I like them.
So at this point, should we start assigning zones to?
Yes.
You know,
So if we're in agreement for these four broad terms for medical, then yeah, we should. And yeah.
I was just gonna address well whenever you.
Oh yeah. Hold on one second. So those 4 categories again are retail shops, cultivation facilities, testing facilities, and manufacturing, which will have different tiers underneath. If everyone's okay with that, there's no additions to it, then we'll proceed forward with zoning stuff. All right, what do you got?
Only thought on it is if you make it multiple tiers and the tiers are clearly, so if low hazard is clearly in many other places and the other ones aren't, you almost run the, you know, it looks like 4 categories, but it may function as 5.
Yeah,
That's the
I
only
would
thing I would say.
think of it as sort of 5, yeah.
Yeah. And also keeping it in mind that it's not yes or no for any of these categories within a certain zone. Thank you. It's our choices are specifically: use requires conditional use permit from the planning board following a conditional use review. Use requires special exemption permit from the planning board following a site plan review, provided the applicant shows substantial evidence that A, there's no alternate site which is both suitable to the proposed use and reasonably available to the applicant, and B, that an environmental neighborhood impact report shows that there will be no adverse impacts on the neighborhood uses or prohibited use or just allowed. You know, so it's not just a yes or no thing, which is nice for us, because as a board, you know, we can do conditional uses, we can do special uses. So you guys ready to get into that? All right, cool. All right, so medical marijuana, retail shops, or storefronts, as they're called, right? Yeah.
Retail, storefront.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of each.
Is there a difference?
Well, they just Just for language sake, they say retail storefront.
Okay, I wasn't sure, because I thought at one point, you had mentioned that a retail, like, needed to have, like, special state approval to be called retail.
Registered.
Registered, okay, thank you, thank you for clarifying.
Okay, so for retail stores, we're gonna toothbrush. We're gonna go.
You carry a toothbrush with you, Jason?
I got in at 2 o'clock this morning,
You.
and I've still got my pack bags in my car.
We're trying to
So,
keep it away.
yeah.
It's LI.
What's that? LI is light industrial.
LIO.
It's a LIO. So for retail or storefronts or whatever they're called, we're gonna first discuss village.
Oh, sorry. Do we need to address in the cultivation the difference between, like we saw on wherever that example is, where it was,
This one,
yes. So home production versus
Production facility. I don't, my personal opinion is like, for home production, that, for medical, I think that that's pretty much governed by the state. Like, I don't know that we're not changing land on somebody's home, like land use.
Right.
You know, we're not changing the use of their land from a primary residence to a commercial facility. So if we're talking about it in a land use sense, and I'm open to interpretation on any of this stuff, that I don't think that we should define that, like.
I would see that as a change of use.
Yeah.
If they're gonna be operating a business out of their home, growing, cultivating marijuana and selling it to dispensaries or wherever they get rid of it, that looks like a business to me. They're profiting from that.
I mean, I'm not a business owner, so how many other businesses are allowed to be run out of a house?
Home occupations are permitted.
Right, so you need a special permit for that.
Yeah.
Bed and breakfast.
But again, that wouldn't be dictated by this per se. That would be
That's why the
dictated-
land use ordinance would be effective, because you can do that in these areas.
So basically, you know, one potential route would be to do home production, I guess, and you would need an occupational permit.
Well, so, in looking at the
Just
land
like with
use.
any other business.
Well, and looking at the land use, with any other business, like, say you're running it from the house, so a bed and breakfast. I know a daycare can be running out of a house.
What about
But
a
it
farm?
becomes,
Yeah, absolutely.
The farm, but, I mean.
A farm, we've got specific things in here for farmland, agricultural, package and storaging, products, processing, animal breeding, care, kennels. You know, we've got all that stuff that people can do out of their house. And for the majority of them, they require a site plan review permit from the planning board following a site plan review. So it requires an application from an applicant to go before the planning board. We review everything to say it's good or not.
So
Site plan review.
for years now, people have been doing this at home, and this hasn't, like, it's never been considered, oh, they can't do it at home because this might happen. These businesses have been operating that at homes since the law was passed.
Oh, is it not for nonprofit?
So,
Yeah, but I don't think that's gonna change anything, it might have been, it might have had to be nonprofit, but people have been doing this out of their houses. Now what are we gonna go find everybody who's still doing it in their house and tell them?
Ultimately, it depends upon quantity. Somebody has a huge business in a tractor trailer truck, keep going through.
Well, their numbers are limited by the state. Now, we're getting into numbers, saying somebody could do 36 plants under one light. All right, so we can start speculating and say, oh, they're gonna have 36 lights, we gotta get in there. Or we can say, shit, they might have one light and 36 plants. What are we gonna do there? It's getting a little too intrusive.
Wait. All
There's
right.
something already.
So, hold on. So,
I think that was directed towards me.
the question becomes, right, how far down are we defining these land uses, okay? Now, yes, people have been doing this out of their homes, and there has been no oversight from the town because the state has said that they took the onus on to regulate these licenses and make sure that everybody was in compliance with them. Now, what the state has done with the medical program has said that towns need to adopt their own ordinances in order for them to have medical marijuana businesses. And as part of that, the CEO is the one that's gonna enforce those standards for the ordinances.
Right.
That's where, like, I think, I'm not saying it's right that we do it, but that's where that question comes in, is we're no longer relying on the state to handle like the proper usage, the proper growth, the proper setbacks, or any of that crap anymore. Now the towns have to do that, and because of that, like, should we place an ordinance on that's regulated or not?
To a degree, but I feel like there's a bit of intrusion here. You're making suggestions of saying that we need to get them out of their houses and in another building, which, I mean, it was just a suggestion, but then it seems like steering that direction. I prefer more what Nate's saying. Let's open it up. Let's just say, look, vote on it like this. We're getting kind of specific now when we're saying, well, you can only have so many plants in your house here or there,
Again,
so.
And that's not, that's not what I'm getting at either.
Right, no, I know.
My whole thing is, regardless of what business it is, regardless, and I understand that it's been going on, I'm just thinking about how do we protect ourselves, the town? Because if you were to open up any other business out of your home, you would need to come in for an occupational permit.
Yeah.
Regardless of what
But
it is.
you do understand that that permit is just, you're filling out that you have a home business in your house.
Right.
That's
That's all it
it.
is.
That's it.
That's all it is.
Right, but okay, so that's fine, and that's not what I'm addressing. I'm addressing when we start talking about, well, when they come with a permit, we'll say, well, look, if you have less than 12 plants.
No, that's not what the permit was for.
Right.
Yeah, the permit's just to say
You guys
you got a business at your house.
Right.
And that, and, you know, and that is.
Yeah, we don't
That's something.
regulate the businesses, the home businesses.
So, yeah, so
just-
let's stop talking about plant numbers and let's just focus on where this is gonna go then, because, it is getting kinda late. So if we start inserting some of these into the zones here that we're going with, I think maybe we get something out of this tonight. So you were on retail, right?
Retail, yes,
So.
For medical.
For medical.
for medical.
So, I mean, I think this is a pretty good, right here, we're talking what, village, it would require a site plan review, not in village residential, site plan review in rural, and special exemption permit in farm and forest. I don't disagree with that too much. I mean,
I mean, I feel like when we did this before, a lot of it just came down to, like, almost everything was just site plan review.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
There has to be some
except for,
exclusions,
yeah, except
though,
for
right?
like, you know, when it got into the tier 2 manufacturing, it's like, yeah, that needs to be.
And then, farm and forest as a zone,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be opened up to certain things like manufacturing and testing. So we can just, mark those off.
Okay.
What do you got, Will? Sorry.
Just to clarify around the home occupation use in kind of a way that you can kind of incorporate what he's saying. If you look in page 86 in the land use, it kind of breaks down the use, and then it breaks down a home occupation must be carried out or be carried on by a permanent resident of the dwelling unit. It must not exceed 500 square feet or 25% of the total floor area of the dwelling unit, whichever is greater, which, ideally that would be 25%. And must not employ more than 2 full-time equivalent or non-resident employees. So there's standards that are already kind of there that kind of curtail this stuff that the planning board will be able to do during a site plan review.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
I just, again, like, it was just, it's more or less making sure that, if we're gonna put these out, like, we need to make sure that it fits all the other ordinances as well.
Yeah,
And it's not saying that I don't, like,
I get the
that
idea,
people
like,
do it out of their
what
house or
Jesse
not.
said is true too. I mean, it does change the use in some ways, but if you're using less than 25% of your home, that's probably the reason they put it in there, right? Because it's still your dwelling. They're making sure that you live there and that, most of your home is for living. So it seems like that kind of upholds the character.
It's more of
of
an
what you're trying to get.
SOP kind of thing that we just need to make sure of happens.
Yeah, okay.
All right, retail store, village,
So,
site plan review.
all right, so the suggestion right now is for retail stores for village is R, which is site plan review from the planning board, and it's either a minor or major. Anybody opposed to that? For village? Village residential is a no. Anyone opposed to that? No? Okay, rural residential. It's an R, which is the same thing. Requires site plan review, minor, major. Anyone opposed to that? Now, I don't know how we would define the difference between a minor and major review for that specifically, but
We can hash that out later.
yeah.
We don't need to have that.
Farm and forest is a special exemption permit from the planning board, which, you know, I think is apt. You know, farm and forest, somebody could put a frisbee golf thing on their farm and then have it sell like weed out of like little cart, whatever, I don't care.
Or, again, farm stand.
Right, farm stand, you know?
Growing,
Yeah.
but we're not dealing with growing right now.
What's, so next one is light industrial, requires site plan review. Anyone opposed to that? Okay. And then public works is no, and resource conservation is no. Okay.
Got one down.
Cultivation facility,
Now, is that indoor and outdoor?
that's, yeah. So, that's gonna have to have caveats. So we're gonna talk specifically
Outdoor versus.
outdoor, and then we'll talk specifically indoor.
So now we're into 6.
Right.
It's like, top or 6 subsections.
Well, actually, you know what? No, we don't have to divide them. We can put them as special exemption permits for whatever we decide, and those exception permits can be dictated by either indoor or outdoor use, and then the conditions on each application can be things like the charcoal filters, setbacks, things like that. We'll just keep it broad, and then.
But I feel like they would need to know those things going into it before they come to us, or does it just require like a pre-meeting then?
No, they would need to know it, and it's something that we'll have to put in.
We put it as suggestions, and then they have to come to deal with us with
Or
special
is
exemptions.
it because,
Suggestion,
if
but-
it's this zone, maybe we need carbon filters, this zone is not acceptable.
I don't know when it comes to,
I
if they were gonna be in village residential and us not making them have those filters that
Oh, yeah.
make it so you don't smell anything outside of the building.
So.
This is grand, knowing that it's a recreational state, that everybody can grow 3 plants in their lawn, and it doesn't matter what ordinances you put out there for most of these businesses.
I know, but you still got people that bitch and complain.
Like the smell recreational, what's the difference between smell and recreational, which we have no say over versus smelling
I will say that the smell from 3 plants to 36 plants, so like for your neighbors.
Depends on how big the 3
Right,
are.
but what if they have 10 houses in a row that have 3 plants in the back?
Right, no, you're right. But
I could have
we're going down, we're going down narrow stuff, and I'm trying to keep things broad.
Yeah.
So
I agree, let's keep it broad, let's.
All right, so
So we're just gonna,
cultivation facility, we'll keep it broad, and then during the,
public hearing, we can, if people really want us to, we can break it up.
Yeah.
There you go.
Let's get this.
That's the genuine answer.
Alright, cultivation facility, village.
so, suggestion is permitted, and C, which is conditional use permit from the planning board, following conditional use, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna,
Special restriction.
Yeah, I'm gonna-
or something.
I would say S for me. I don't know how you guys feel about a special exemption permit in village,
Yeah,
if we're talking about growing in the village.
right,
Yeah,
that would definitely have to be,
oh yeah, because that's gotta be hammered out.
maybe village, rural,
Village residential.
yeah. Is there a village rural?
There's
No.
rural
Village
residential.
or village
Residential.
residential?
Got it.
Yes, well,
Just speaking from knowing enough people in the area and knowing how much we have out there, it seems like a special exemption would be a pretty hard burden to fill, because it's not just like, oh, required site plan review is essentially what a special exemption could be, because you have so many standards you can enforce on someone, but the true S is now like a hard standard that you have to show that you can't do this anywhere else. I just think anytime you put an S in village where there's a ton of like open buildings, it's just, I don't know. From a town planning point of view, any S is in a place where there's a need to fill it, seems tough. And when you have the ability underneath the R to like really put them in, it just seems like the S would be, an impediment.
What's the difference between the special exemption and the conditional use? What would be?
So a conditional use permit puts a term limit on what's being done, basically. Like say somebody comes to us and we provide them with a conditional use permit, and we say, listen, we understand that you want to do this. It sounds like a good idea to us, but we aren't really familiar with it. So we're going to give you a conditional use permit, so you're going to be able to do this for a year, and then you're going to have to come back to us. Right. A special exemption means that they have to prove to the board that they can't do this within another zone of the town.
Right.
And so for a village, it would be saying, listen, I understand that you live in the village, you want to grow weed here, but we as a town think that you can grow weed over in light industrial or farm and forest or rural residential. Right. We don't want the main business of cultivation to be happening within the village center. We will permit it in other areas.
So if we left that up to special use and say they did something like rally their neighbors and everybody in the neighborhood signed something and said, hey,
right, saying we don't have a problem with
then
it.
we could say,
right,
okay,
The
we can absolutely
special
approve.
permit doesn't run with the land, and you have to if you
Sell
the building or the business,
They have to reapply.
that next person has to come and apply themselves.
I mean, I agree with you there. That maybe sounds like something that's reasonable if we're kind of looking at the village.
Question.
Yep.
I don't think that's reasonable. I think that there's large enough buildings, there's large enough swaths of land, and, these grows are going on in village currently, and people know about a handful of them. It would essentially shut down a ton of people. Even our project over at Walker's, that building is village.
Right.
But
We're talking about cultivation, not
cultivating. Right, but that building's massive, and it could very easily be used for a cultivation facility, just like so many other buildings down there.
Why do you feel that would shut down the possibility to cultivate there? If we
That's village.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean we're not shutting it down. It's just saying, I guess my understanding anyways, it would just be a little bit more scrutiny, is what you're saying, just to make sure that, if it is a situation where it doesn't work. But then again, that's going to put a heavy burden on the planning board to look at every single one, specially.
So according to permit legend, special use says requires a special exemption permit from the planning board following site plan review, provided the applicant shows by substantial evidence there's no alternate site which both suitable to the proposed use and reasonably available to the applicant, which if someone didn't own property somewhere else, that's what it's saying, and that an environmental neighborhood impact report shows that there will be no adverse impacts on the neighboring uses.
It's mainly more than anything.
Well, I guess my thing is we've all kind of looked at what that means to not be able to use another place, or to say that you can't turn a profit on land. And that is the area that becomes, like, we've looked at what it takes to get variances and things like that. The standard right around that is what's troubling for me. When you do require site plan review, you are essentially able to do the same things, but you're not locked into the standard of, if we go to site requires, a special exemption permit, like, we can see that there's burden. It's not really on the planning board to make a discretionary call at that point. There is a discretionary call in there, but not completely, where it requires site plan review, given the correct standards, would give you guys essentially the ability to do the same thing without being locked into something. If that makes any sense. Or
No, that's a good point. He makes a good point there. I mean, if we do follow the site plan review, I don't know, is this one we have to nail down right now, or can we actually just, maybe keep going forward and we'll discuss this one, you know, because this one is, we don't
Again,
have
this
to.
isn't locking anything, we can put whatever we want now and have a public hearing and it could change.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
for
It
all
just seems
intents-
silly to say you can't grow inside in a place where everyone's gonna be able to grow outside.
Yeah, I mean, there's
And if you're gonna have
places
an
around-
inside grow, you want it where firefighters, so we've talked about this before, the burn hazard, and ideally, you want grows to be where people can respond to. You know what I mean? You want things that could possibly catch fire to be in places where the roads are typically well maintained and fire hydrants are dug out and, you know, you've got, you know, you want that type of situation. That's kind of the idea of putting a fire department in the town center.
And there's
Let's put a pin on this one, and
multiple
just move on to R.
Yeah, there's some reasonable concerns on,
We'll write down both, we can dive into.
There's just a
later.
lot of professional examples that you can look up yourselves online, like where there's a lot of professional grows out there in the middle of cities and buildings, and people have no idea that they're even there. So like, if you guys are really worried about the just the typical idea of having a grow in a residential area, most people don't even know it's there, and they think it's a medical building of some kind, so.
Fair enough.
We had one in Keyser Falls that he had a truck trailer, so it was legal, it had a plate on it. You know, so it was legally in his driveway. He was 5 feet from the property line, and he had the thing, I was told, he had the thing full of plants.
No.
And, no, he did not, but the neighbors thought he did.
That's correct.
Right. You know, he had some plants in it, but not the number they thought he did. But the
Alright,
point
so
is that,
leaving that one up for
Well,
discussion.
much more professional examples than the trailer.
I
Okay.
understand
We're
that,
gonna-
but.
we're gonna move on to
That's
the
what
next
we find
next
out when
one.
we have a
Yeah, no.
meeting.
All right, I wanna keep this going unless you guys wanna keep talking about this one thing, because it's gonna stalemate the issue.
It's kind of the biggest one.
For you,
Well,
but
just
we're trying to get the
for
whole
any-
ordinance pushed through. You know, like, not pushed through, but agreed upon, so.
Cultivation is the most.
Ultimately, it's not even gonna be up to us, it's gonna be up to the town. So we can put whatever we want right now, and again, like, it doesn't mean any of them are gonna take place. Because we could, in the public hearing, have an overwhelming, you know, from the public, response
Yes,
to,
or no,
we want this way,
hint.
or we want this way. And
Overwhelming
then-
public opinion.
And then we
There
adapt.
already is, that's my point, there's already been overwhelming opinion, there's operating, if the burden is, we just wanna go with what's pretty normal now, it would be required site plan review, it wouldn't be any more strict, because we've had these laws for over 8 years.
Right, I think you made a good point there, you made a good point, I think we can
This is the
discuss that
biggest
further,
one,
because
then
it makes sense.
If it's the biggest one, then I
honest,
think we
and
should
then-
spend a little bit more time on it. Wouldn't you say, like, this is the
Sure.
most important one? We
I would
should-
just love to see a pen that said R, not S.
Sure, I've got R and /S, so we'll hash it out, you know, it's both on there, we're just talking things through.
Yes, sir.
If you make this too complicated, there's dozens of people out there that these guys don't even know about that are growing pot. And if you make it so they have to come in and get 2 hours and do that, they're just gonna vote no and just keep doing it on their own without anything. What you wanna do is get everybody into the thing and then do with a policy of gradualism. Make it a little more complicated after you get them in, get everybody out there, and just a little bit at a time. Don't make it real strict at the beginning. Get everybody above ground, and the main thing you gotta do is get people to stop using illegal pesticides and stuff like that, and then it's going, people are going through chemotherapy and stuff. You've gotta get everybody above ground, educated, and doing it correctly. Don't make it too complicated, because they'll all show up and vote no.
We're not trying to make this too complicated, we're
No.
just trying to hash out each
Yeah.
thing, and
Right.
to the point is, if you make it too lenient, then
Yeah,
you
I
wanna
know, you
make
make
it
it
more
too
lenient,
lenient, yeah.
then you've got facilities that are, as we saw earlier.
Especially when we've got people coming in from out of state, you know, we don't want that.
Right, so we wanna make it so that
Right.
the locals have the knowledge and the ability to do this.
Yeah.
So we're not, we're just putting a pin in this one right now, we've
Yeah.
got both written out, let's go to village residential,
Yeah. Village residential,
cultivation.
under cultivation,
Same thing, same idea,
yeah,
like,
S and R and S,
For now.
Yeah, one
For
or the
now.
other.
okay.
It requires, I think it requires more sleep and more, understand, you know,
Yeah.
discussion.
Rural residential, I'm okay with an R,
Yeah, me too.
yeah? Cliff?
Yeah.
Okay. Farm and forest?
Yeah,
I'm okay with permitted use.
Permitted, yeah.
yeah.
Growing.
It's an agricultural project.
It's full.
Product, I'm completely okay with that. Light industrial, R?
Yeah, or, I mean, people could set up in a warehouse in the light industrial area.
It's still a site plan review. And then public works and resource
Why
conservation or no?
Why P for farm and forest and R for light industrial?
Well,
What's the difference?
so farm and forest, if you're thinking about the map, farm and forest is like out in the sticks, and then we've got two light industrial places.
I know.
Right, Dwight Mills place, and then over by the.
Well, we got
river
that
there.
whole length that runs to the border,
Or the border of.
on the southern side of 25.
Oh yeah, so the
That whole
yeah.
section all the way.
Right, where the salt
border is in light
box
industrial.
thing is
Yeah.
was, yeah, and which is a lot. So both of those are closer to the
And then the
village
shop.
than farm and forest are,
Yeah.
and that's why my reasoning itself would be light industrial would require a site plan review, whereas farm and forest is completely away from the village. But I mean, you're absolutely entitled to whatever. So if you disagree, then we can talk it out and keep going. Okay.
RP,
All right.
testing facilities.
For what, resource protection? Is that what
You raising your hand?
Sorry.
I just feel like I'm being a pain, but I can't help but think that there's just as much detriment to having a farm and forest where you're near our resource protection areas, because phosphate runoff and pesticides and things like that. If you're dealing with an outdoor grow, there's the fact that they're probably gonna clear to get, light in there and things like that. To me, seems more
Is it-
invasive than growing in a building.
I mean, that's the same with agricultural products though, because we're not talking about a whole lot of different pesticides
Right,
than.
getting growing
Yeah.
corn.
Agricultural and fauna forest, as of the current land uses, is permitted.
Yeah.
But not even
And, you know,
Yeah.
just allowed.
we have to
use.
take into consideration even with agriculture, if there are bodies of water or where the drainage is going, it's not like we're not.
But doesn't it require a site plan review?
No, it's
No,
permitted.
It's a Y, yeah, allowed use, no permit required. But the use must comply with all applicable land use standards.
Yeah, I mean, phosphate runoff, algae blooms, those types of things.
They're over me all the time.
All right.
It's a big deal everywhere else.
So next one, testing facilities. Let's go with village for testing facilities. What do you guys say?
I agree.
Yeah.
R? Okay, I'm good with R. Village residential?
Probably, I mean, it wouldn't likely happen, but,
You know,
I can't see anybody's, I mean, who knows what would happen?
I don't know, like,
I think facilities should be anywhere. No,
I don't,
We shouldn't be looking for no's. We haven't had it for 8 years. We shouldn't be looking to specifically say no places. Let the free market decide that.
I mean, is there a hazard to testing facilities?
No, not really.
Passes spectrum or everything.
They're inside of a
Site plan
building.
review.
Like,
yeah.
Site plan, yeah.
Case by case basis. Rural residential,
R, same.
Same thing.
Farm and forest?
Not likely, but same thing, right? Site plan review if it were to come before us.
Why?
I don't know, why not?
Because I guess we're talking about an actual testing facility, which would be like a commercial building.
Right.
You know, so I don't know
So-
if that's what we want to put, like in farm and forest, like.
it's really small.
Yeah, you can fit it in
It's a
this,
tiny machine.
you can do everything in this room. Like, it's not.
special.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not bothered either way.
Maybe we put it just like you do, in the S and the R, and we'll discuss it further. I mean,
Or, those are gonna be our points to
And then-
really hammer out through the public.
Light industrial, R,
yeah, right.
yeah.
I mean, I almost feel it's just permitted.
Actually, yeah, I mean, it's
Yep, it's in a
I'm okay with that,
business
yeah.
structure.
So it's just P.
Yeah, P.
You know,
Water, no, resource conservation is.
okay. Manufacturing tier 1, which would be.
Oh, wait, what are we doing for public works?
Oh, public works, no.
And resource conservation
Yeah.
Okay, manufacturing tier 1, this is no to low hazards.
No to low. So for village,
Yeah, I don't think it'd be a problem, it's not explosive
R.
stuff. It's,
Site plan.
okay. Village residential,
is, so,
R. Rural,
Same.
R. Farm and forest. Actually, well, I would stick with R.
Performance forest.
That's just me. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean,
We're talking about manufacturing.
right.
Sure, R.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tier 1 stuff, right?
Yeah.
Those are caveats.
Yeah.
When we talked about the idea of fire hazard and everything like that, it just seems like there's clearly, in this one, there is a glaring example of something that would require maybe a finer look.
RS.
There you go.
So if you end up in the tier 2 and the more explosive stuff, maybe, we would say S, right?
I mean, if it was, let's work through tier 1 and then we'll get to tier 2.
So
light industrial, I'd say.
Right, yeah.
PWRC is no.
what else is a P right now? That's testing? Testing and manufacturing. I think both of those, permitted in light industrial.
Yep. And then
That makes sense to me.
Cultivating,
Yeah.
and farming forest is also
Okay.
permitted.
All right, manufacturing, tier 2, hazardous. Village,
No.
I would say no.
Village residential, no.
No.
What's this one for?
Tier 2.
Rural residential, S.
Yeah, maybe S.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then farm and forest, no. Light industrial, S. You guys okay with it?
Yeah.
Right.
What's that site plan?
What's that? Oh, R?
Yeah, R for manufacturing and light industrial.
I mean, again, we're talking about something that's a higher level of risk, basically, for the town. So I don't see like why we should steer away from the S. Well, I guess, but an S does imply that they can't do it somewhere else. So I guess maybe we should do an R to keep it within the light industrial.
That would be the only place I would
Right.
kind of really want to see it, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, light industrial
R.
would be the only place.
And then no and no for, what do you got?
On village, I don't understand the S.
The what?
It should be an R.
It's not an S, it's an N.
for tier 2.
For tier 2.
If there's anywhere that you should be doing hazardous stuff like that, it's near first responders in an area that's not, it's not village residential, it's village. It's not a place where people dwell, it's a place where business is done.
But there's foot traffic, there's,
Yeah.
It
you
is,
know,
but
there's
it's-
all, there's
all
cars.
of that
there's
stuff is
stuff.
covered by state law.
Yeah.
Like, they have to come and decide whether or not you can even use, like, if you look at LD 1539, it's already laid out. You have to have an inspector come and decide that you have an area that is safe in your space in general. It doesn't make sense to me that we would remove that space from an area that, like, we want, one, business to be in, and two, it's where people respond to things. We wouldn't get rid of a gas station in a village.
We're talking about permitting it in light industrial, which is for the Keizer Falls Fire Department, a shorter drive to light industrial than it would be to most of the village.
Regardless, I'm saying the village is still, like, literally right there, and it's the place where it makes the most sense. It's where it's zoned almost across the board in every other town.
But not for business use, for here, for our land use ordinance.
Yeah.
Almost every village occupation in here it requires a site plan review. It's just not, it's not out there. And then wholesale businesses are
But
S.
not permitted, it's not permitted.
So it should, special permit.
Or no's. There's no's in here for agricultural packaging and storage, agricultural products processing, animal breeding, care of the ground. But I mean, if we're talking about manufacturing, and we're talking about packaging and storage in a hazardous manner, or even like, you know.
Two places there already refill propane outside, exposed tanks. It is literally the exact same chemical, except for now, there's people coming out testing you and making sure that you have a space indoors that makes it more safe than being outdoors. And there's two businesses that do it already. It's just, it's where people zone this type of thing. They zone hazardous things in village so that they can actually be responded to and be accessed. It just, the idea of a no is just, it doesn't quite make sense if the idea is that foot traffic could be at risk when you have people constantly walking around cocaine.
I think the idea of a no is more to limit it to the light industrial section of town, which is where most manufacturing should be done within the land use.
But the mill is in village.
Right,
And it's
but,
gonna be filled full of manufacturing, ideally.
so they haven't come before us for a permit, as far as I know.
It's what it's traditionally been done for how many years, and that's where most of the businesses.
I was thinking just a hard line no is not.
Well, again,
not really
we're
a
talking
problem.
2 tiers, like manufacturing tier 1, which what the woolen mill would have been.
I just think
It's still
if
site
we're gonna
plan
start
review.
taking
It's
time
not
manufacturing,
hazardous.
then have
Yeah, but
anything hazardous.
anything hazardous is getting checked through thoroughly by the state, so like, to your point that it's hazardous is okay, because the state is gonna make
Well,
sure.
maybe the state, but again, like, as a
Right.
town too, we can decide to be more stringent and if,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
So the precedent is that you already allow
So,
butane and propane to be openly out in the public, in the middle of the village.
I think that this is
It's a
gonna
lot
be,
safer
I think this is
process.
gonna be a point, that's gonna have to like move to the public hearing.
I hear you, I
Again,
think you
we're
guys are,
starting at no.
I think
Well,
you guys are
we're
hearing
getting
tier
it
2
already.
and automatically thinking somebody's gonna blow up, when that's not gonna happen. People know what they're doing, they're professionals.
When's the last
I
time you
don't-
heard of
I-
anything blowing
You
up?
I
know
think
what I
that-
mean? Like, it's nothing hazardous is gonna happen, they're just
Okay.
working with hazardous materials.
I think that it's
first
less,
round draft of,
Yeah.
of a very,
as-
quick.
and to assume
If
like
Walker
what people are
Chevrolet is
thinking.
Village, that's the safest place, because these guys know what they're doing. It's a cement block building.
Mhm.
It's got a big lot.
100%.
That's the logical place to put it.
And it's had hazardous stuff there before.
And it's had hazardous stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like,
So are you
So
guys,
have the site
propo-
plan.
wait, so,
you want to regulate it, because that's probably the only safe place in the village to do it. But you want to have it so that these guys could do it in that one location, or if there's another location as good as that one, that they could do it there.
So if we
Give
did
them
did
an
the
X.
special exemption permit, I mean, again, this is all loose, right? Like at least maybe get S.
Right.
All this could
If
change.
you're going loose, keep it R. S isn't loose, there's, you know, it's not loose. S requires us to meet something.
so we've got, what do we got circled that's contentious right now?
We have
I don't see what.
cultivation facility and
What would
village,
you guys
cultivation
do from that?
facility and village residential, cultivation facility and light industrial.
Okay,
We have testing facility in farm and forest, manufacturing tier 1 in farm and forest, and manufacturing tier 2 in village.
okay,
Those are our up in the airs.
okay. And those are all between R and S?
Sorry, this is an R and N.
Oh, R and N,
Or I
okay.
guess we,
Yeah.
R and S if that's what I was going off of the
No,
last thing
no,
that we
yeah,
said, so.
yeah, we said N.
I mean, I do another one.
We do,
S.
I mean, it's,
R and S.
yeah, R and N, and an S. Okay,
Oh, sorry, there's R and P for cultivation and light industrial.
okay.
So we have to have another hearing before we can have a special town
I mean,
meeting?
we could have
We
another,
do.
we could have another workshop on this too.
We can.
Before we,
I think we should.
We haven't called any public hearing yet, so.
I think we
This
should
is
have another
first
workshop
round.
before we have a public hearing to fine tune it. right?
Yeah, well, I mean, not only that, but to write up the articles, review them, make sure that they're how everyone wants it to look. And then we've also got to debate these points here, between,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth further research on all of our parts.
okay.
Well, in order to do that, we gotta set up,
Yeah.
We can
set it up now.
So, I'm thinking though, just to kind of give some structure to the next workshop.
We just focus on those.
Yeah, that we focus on the ones that are in question, and that we, I don't know if we want to divvy out like some research or just keep it general, and say, hey, we're going to discuss these ones that are in contention.
I mean, if we all come back with actual talking points,
Yeah.
would be probably the best thing. Because if we just come back without that, then we're just gonna be right where we are right now.
Right. So, but are you talking about talking points to each one or talking points to a specific one? Either way?
Yeah, whatever you feel most passionate about.
Yeah.
So I feel like some of these could easily sway.
Right.
You know, again, like if you feel more passionate about one particular one, then go for that. That'd be my recommendation.
Okay, before we divvy that out, all right, so let's talk about dates for the next workshop. Capacity for before the meeting next week.
I won't be able to.
No? Okay. The following week?
After the meeting, the week after the meeting.
Yeah.
Are you talking the week of the meeting or after the meeting?
Week after, or the week of.
So that you're the 25th or the 18th, the 18th to the 25th. We have to have 2 weeks in the paper.
Did we,
No, that's on the agenda for next week's meeting, is to figure out how you guys wanna go about that.
all right, so what's 2 weeks? When's the earliest we can post something?
The 18th, or the 20th would be the first one that we could get in for, and then the 27th would be the second. So the first time we'd be able to do it would be, I guess technically, the 28th.
What do you got, Jeff?
I think you got a very well-educated group here, and the board maybe should listen to them a little bit more than just denying it.
I don't think we're denying,
No,
and
I
we
know.
have been listening, and that's why we have the two, and we haven't just stated one.
Right.
You know, I think that there's valid points on both sides, and we need to hash them out more. You know, and I understand that there's, you know, some personal interest in these, but at the same time, like, you know.
We can't just have it dictated to us how to,
Yeah.
we gotta work through it.
We're not saying it's one way or the other.
I just say, don't be afraid
You
of.
guys are confusing a lot of personal interests with what makes sense, though, honestly.
I disagree, but.
You know, like, don't confuse what.
I don't think anybody's confusing anything. We're just trying to get through this, man. We want to get this done, and I think the board's been pretty friendly. And we're not perfect, but we want to get it done the way you guys want to get it done, basically. You know, and we're trying to work through it. And I appreciate you bearing with us.
Just as hard as you guys too, trying to work with you guys also.
But it's your
Trying to
business, bud.
suggest-
This is all volunteer work for us. And again, I'm not trying to cross swords with you, but just, you know, we're getting there. We're getting there, and the board's been pretty friendly.
I'm just trying to help you guys do your job.
Right, and I appreciate you brought a lot of good stuff to it. Yeah, but you got to bear with us a little bit. We're getting there. We're rounding third now, and we'll get this shit squared away. Just bear with us a little bit. I mean, it's frustrating for us too. I know it's frustrating for
I'm
everybody.
just trying to help you bear with it, that's all. I'm just trying to help you with the task of figuring it out. That's all I'm doing. That's why I'm here.
Okay, so.
28th, I guess, would be the first time we can do
The
it.
28th will work?
I'm open to it.
I believe I screwed up last
It's a
time.
Thursday.
I'm asking her, what?
Are you asking if it'll work for me?
No,
Or just in
if
general?
it'll work out for ad wise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it should.
You guys have availability on the 28th?
I won't be able to make it.
Okay. Have you got is that a Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday, 3/28.
Would another day work for you, Cliff?
It'd have to be after the 5th of March. Or earlier, I'll be here the 19th.
After the 5th? April? April?
Yeah, to April.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead with the 28th.
Yeah, let's
then we'll
go
get you-
for it. I
Okay.
can't. Either one of the first or the third one.
Alright, so the 28th, 7 PM. And, let's see. So 28th at 7 PM, marijuana workshop. The things that we are gonna discuss, this is for us, the board, are cultivation facilities in village residential, light industrial. And what I'll do is I'm gonna transcribe this into an email, and I'll email it out to all the board members. Okay, that way everyone can do their own research about whether they think it should be an R or an S or a P.
RS, RP, RS, RNS.
So there's another workshop?
Yes,
When is it?
The 28th.
at 7 p.m.
And so following this workshop, hopefully we'll be able to pick a date for the public hearing, and then the public special town vote. Shortly after.
All right.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This concludes our workshops.
Thank you for your service.